Recreation District. We have a volunteer to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm supposed to ask you to please silence your cell phones.
I think I did mine already.
Rosanna?
Director Dan Whitland.
Here.
Director Ann Rice.
Here.
Director Mark Solich.
Here.
Vice President Cliff Jacobson.
Here.
President Bill Kellogg.
Approval of the consent calendar. Ann has asked for 2 items to be taken off, B and E. So we'll vote for everything else and then we'll talk about B and E. So can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar? After we have a second, we can talk about anything on the consent calendar you wish to talk about.
So moved.
And second?
Second.
Second, thank you. Is there any, from the board only, please, any comments from the board about the consent calendar?
Now this is my time to talk?
Yeah, not yet. Wait till we vote for what's on the consent calendar, then we'll do the PD for you. So you have to bear with us. We're pretty much a new board, so certain procedures and stuff we're still learning about. And so, yes, sir.
Can you move your mic a little closer to you?
Oh, you mean, it's not,
Yeah.
it's me that's not speaking into the mic?
Yeah, it's just a little quieter than it normally is.
My wife tells me I don't talk very well, and I don't hear either, so at any rate, I'll try to do a better job now. So, any comments by any of the directors on the approval of consent calendar? Hearing none, do we have a roll call vote? Georgiana?
Director Whitland.
Yes.
Director Rice.
Yes.
Director Solich.
Yes.
Director Jacobson.
Yes.
President Kellogg.
Yes. Now we'll cover, and Ann, you, first, D, acceptance of invoice for election services.
Yeah, I just had a question. This is on iPad page 23, an invoice from Butte County Elections. I was under the impression that we prepaid $65,000. And so, is this?
It's for the November general election.
Oh, thank you
Yeah.
so much. Okay, that covers that. Thank you very much. And then on iPad page 31, in the right-hand column would be new language on item 8 in the red. To avoid contributing biological, chemical, or other should be contaminants, not contaminates in the water. That's all.
Thank you.
That's something I would not have caught. Good job, Ann.
Okay, the next one is approval of changes to Paradise Lake rules and regulations.
Yeah, that's the one I just addressed.
Huh?
That's the one I just addressed on.
Oh, you
page
did? I
31.
wasn't.
The word
Well, see, my
contaminants.
wife's right about my.
So
Do we
So
have a
with that-
motion to approve both of those after you?
So with that change on the word from contaminates to contaminants,
Yes.
and then I have another, since we're going to change it,
Sure.
on the very first page, under locker vehicle, that paragraph, this is really just picky, but to extend privilege all upon fair, equitable basis, at the same time to ensure that use of recreational facilities, the word ensure should be E-N-S-U-R, implying to make sure, not to have it covered by insurance, although insure is a secondary accepted spelling. Also, the same word insure on the second to the last sentence, to ensure the safety should be also E-N-S-U-R-E. So if we're going to make a change on item 8, maybe we could make a change on those two as well.
We just lost our proofreader for the Senior Center newsletter. Would you?
Would you please make a motion, Ann?
Could I make a motion then to those changes that I have?
I'll second that motion to approve all those.
Does that motion include item 2B as
Both of
well?
them.
It has to be rather specific.
And he wants to make sure that that motion includes both of your,
Oh, to include
to D and E.
acceptance of both D and E with
Yeah.
those changes.
And my second would include that.
Okay. And again, does the board members have any comments?
I don't.
Roll call again.
Director Whitman?
Yes.
Director Rice?
Yes.
Director Solis?
Yes.
Vice President Jacobson?
Yes?
President Kellogg?
Yes. Public participation. Individuals will be given an opportunity to address.
Mr. President,
Pardon?
I'm sorry to interrupt. Before you get to that, there's two items. One, just a notice from the general manager about our recording of the meeting. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want all the public to know that as a test tonight, we are broadcasting tonight's meeting on Facebook Live. That iPad is back there in the corner to try and reach as many folks that are interested in watching the proceedings, just so everyone in the public's aware that that's occurring tonight.
The second item I have is on your dais you have a request from Cal Water Service. This is not an item that has been included in your agenda. It was received after the agenda was posted. The Brown Act contains a very limited exception where you can add an item to agenda. And there's two conditions that have to be met. One is the item appeared after the posting of your regular meeting agenda, which in this case is true. And second, the item needs your immediate attention before your next regularly scheduled meeting, which I think is also true in this case. What Cal Water is requesting is consideration of a mutual aid and assistance agreement given the conditions at the Oroville spillway. So if it's kind of a two-step approach. If you're inclined to add this to your agenda, that would be the first item of business, a motion to add this item to the agenda. We would need a supermajority vote, at least 4 members. And then, assuming that was approved, you can then slot it in the business of the agenda wherever you like.
Okay, so we should have a motion.
I move we add it to the agenda.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 And the second part of it?
What does it mean?
But you can
Well-
we can deal with this now, or you can take care of it later
Let's-
in the agenda. Your call.
Why don't we deal with it now? Get
Do
it
it
out
right
of the way.
now. Sure, get it over with.
Okay, let's go ahead. Comments from the board.
Well, as most of you are aware, Cal Water Service Company, this is their Oroville district, which serves the city of Oroville, the low-lying areas that were evacuated in the Oroville Dam emergency. And so while they were able to operate okay during this last event, they have concerns about future rainfall. The emergency or concerns are not over yet. So if there was flooding that actually entered into the city of Oroville lowlands where they have pipes, etc., they may need to do extensive flushing, leak repairs, things like that they would appreciate having our crews come and participate. Since it's been an emergency order by the governor, all of the expenses associated, that's reimbursable either directly to us or through Cal Water and then to us. But it would just be us working with them, sending a team down to assist them in bringing their system back up to speed in the event of emergency. And that the big concern right now is not today's storm, but the following storms and whether that they can do what they need to do to repair the spillway quickly enough. And so that's why it's important if you're willing to approve this. And then we could enter into an agreement with Cal Water Oroville, subject to legal counsel's review and approval to effectuate that effort.
Does this mean we will ship some water down the Miocene Canal to them?
Yeah, probably not.
No, this is not a water delivery. This is just personnel.
Assistance.
Personnel helping
yeah.
out?
Crews and equipment.
Mr.
Nobody has any idea what that will cost or time and labor.
I can.
It'll be
I can speak to
reimbursed
that.
anyway.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Cliff.
I know Tony Ruggles, and Cal Water is one of my customers, so I don't know if that's going to make me have to recuse myself. I doubt it under this situation. But I had a conversation with him, and basically there's been a loose agreement between all of the water districts that our manager, George, attends with the other water districts. And they have this loose agreement that if ever there's a situation where help is needed because of an emergency situation, that they would pitch in whichever way it went. And so I think that it's appropriate. And his comments were, it simply means that if we are pressed for time or resources and we have a situation where we have contaminated water and we need help in bringing that back into compliance, that whatever they would have available, they would volunteer for their time, mostly, not materials, but if they did need materials because of damage or whatever from flooding.
They would need basically our field staff.
Yeah,
Dan?
basically, and there was not there's no dollar amount there, and I would assume that there'd be some kind of repayment in some kind.
That's what he just said,
for that.
yeah.
But my only concern with this would be if we give them an agreement, we put a stipulation of time on that so that it's not ongoing past the emergency situation.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, we unfortunately don't have the benefit of an agreement to review and you guys to consider. So if this is something you're inclined to essentially conditionally authorize subject to manager and council concurrence, something along those lines, I think you need to give us some direction on what you want to see in that agreement. I think one is maybe a time limit. You know, we don't want to see this carrying out to, I don't know, you tell me, but you want it relatively short in duration because otherwise we're talking about a potentially fairly extensive agreement, a commitment of PID's labor and materials and such forth. So that's the type of thing I think the board would want to see in advance. Second, I think a condition you'd want to see is full reimbursement, whatever that means. You know, if unfortunately we had a piece of equipment that was damaged while fixing their issue, or even worse, an employee that was injured while fixing their issue, you know, those are the type of scenarios that I think of that you'd want to have an agreement protect the district under that scenario. So those are a couple conditions that I thought of off the top of my head, but we'd want to hear from you about any other ideas that you'd like to see in that agreement.
Dan, you had some comment, you've been trying to get in.
Yeah, it's all right.
Squeeze in here.
Because of the fact that this very brief letter is not up there, may I just take a second? It's only 3 lines. Read it to them so they know what it says.
Okay, sure.
It just says, it addresses Mr. Barber. It says, California Water Service Company, Cal Water, hereby requests mutual aid and assistance from the Paradise Irrigation District. This request is for the Oroville spillway emergency as declared by Governor Brown in February 12, 2017, executive order, blah, blah, blah. Please contact me below. So it's very brief. They just want our assistance if they need it.
So the problem the board has is what kind of stipulations? Mark?
Yeah, do we have any idea how long the emergency declaration is going to be for?
How long is it going to rain and how, yeah.
Open-ended right now, is that?
Yeah, it's pretty open-ended because they don't know what they have to deal with. I would assume that this, if you wanted to not pick a day, then you could stipulate that this is in effect while Governor Brown's declaration of the Oroville spillway emergency is in effect.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I know that in the town in the past, when there have been requests like this for mutual aid, they can't ever demand that you give more than what you've got available. And then also the town in the past has always been reimbursed for every penny they've ever been billed. So, and they're our brothers. If the tables were turned, would we be wanting their help? Absolutely.
We have a motion?
Well, I think before we go for a motion, let's.
Well, we can debate after the motion, but the motion, I'm just letting you guys feel your way around, but now we need a motion and a second, and then we could go on and debate this thing some more.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve their request with the stipulation that we iron out the terms of the request before we transmit it to them.
Okay,
I'll second that.
second. Now, back to the board. We have any more discussion, and then we'll go to the public if they have anything. Yes, George?
I just would like clarification. Does the board want to see the agreement before it's executed? Or are you giving authority to entrust in Dustin and I to protect the district in the agreement?
I think we can trust you, but
I have no problem with that.
Or I.
It's not necessary for me to say anything. You guys
yeah.
Go ahead and take the issue. It's
So-
before us.
Dustin, you probably have sort of a boilerplate agreement, contract type thing that you could sort of fill in the blanks. I think the key things are that, like you said, it should protect us, indemnify us from any damages that might occur due to no fault of us. I think we're still, employee-wise and our workers' comp-wise and insurance-wise, we're still going to be reliable or liable for our employees' welfare, whether we loan them out to Oroville or not. So there are certain things that we're probably not going to be able to pass off to them, and you'll know which ones those are and which ones they aren't. So we'll rely on you to put together a contract that protects us and our interests to the best that you can and stipulates a time frame where this contract would end, because it's got to have a starting point and an ending point. And I think it would be prudent if we make it short-term. We can always renew it if we have to.
Yeah, I was actually going to suggest that same thing. If you're concerned about term, you could make it for last until your next board meeting, where we bring the agreement back to you for reconsideration and an adoption for a longer term at that point.
I
if
think that
you're so
maybe the
inclined.
agreement could kick in upon the occurrence of an incident and terminate after successful mitigation. Does that make sense? So if the dam spillway broke and the place got flooded and groundwater wells got contaminated and you had to move in there and help them, once you mitigate that issue and they're back to potable drinking water,
Yeah.
then it's terminated unless an event happens again.
why make it that complicated? Just say until the emergency situation is ended, period.
Well, that, I think is what I just said, isn't it?
Yeah, in about 14 paragraphs, I guess, yeah.
Okay, I understand that we'd use our field staff and equipment out of the yard to help them. George, is that about right?
They could utilize possibly some treatment staff assistance. They're just
Testing
like
water.
us. They have a limited crew, and so, they may need one of our treatment guys to come take a shift while they get some sleep or things along. So I would expect that it would extend to treatment plant staff as well, as we can afford them, not anything beyond that.
Okay,
I wouldn't actually think they need too much in the way of the treatment plant, because all they have is independent wells and groundwater. They don't have a treatment facility that they need help with, do they?
Yes, they have a surface water treatment facility.
Where's that at?
It comes out of the Powers Canal. Used to come from the Miocene. I believe it's a pressure filter system.
Would that be part of the area that would be
area.
damaged in an issue like that, or isn't that upstream of it, or?
Well, it may not be damaged, but if you have a contamination of the entire system and you're spending hours operating this thing, they may need some relief.
I see.
As they continue to make water to flush out the contaminants from the system.
Makes sense.
any more comments by the board?
Nope.
It's open to public comment, and if you'll please come to the podium and give your name and any pertinent information. If you live in town or live in the district or what have you. Of course, Ward wants to be the first. The limit is up to 5
Thank you,
minutes.
Mr. President and Board. My name is Ward Habriel, and I would like to make a comment on this issue because it's a fairly new board. By the way, welcome, new board. And we would hope that you'd be open to a good ear from the public. More on this public. issue, and that has to do with my experience with Cal Water. I was a consultant with Cal Water for over 4 years. I've also been a stockholder for Cal Water for over 20 years. I'm very familiar with their policies and their procedures. This is not the first time they have asked a companion district to do such a thing. Most of the time, from my experience and what I've heard, especially at board meetings, is that these have been very reciprocal and very generous from companion districts. Frankly, it seems to be a good policy between districts, and I would encourage you to accept this. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ward. Anybody else from the public? Yes, sir. Martin.
Members, Martin Nichols, just a comment. I suggest that the council look closely at the term mutual aid. Mutual aid is a common term used generally in fire services, and it usually means I'll help you, you help me, and we don't charge each other. So I suggest caution on the legal meaning of that term.
Okay. Anybody else a comment from the audience? Hearing no more, any comments from the board? Let's vote on the motion that we have. We'll make it a roll call because of the nature of the thing. Georgiana?
Director Whitman?
Yes.
Director Rice?
Yes.
Director Solar?
Yes.
Vice President Jacobson?
Yes.
President Kellogg?
Yes. And thank you for bringing it to the board, and I hope Cal Water appreciates the offer we had, and we're relying on Dustin and George. We can have a special meeting if it's necessary to approve contract or whatever, if you guys feel it's necessary for the board to approve it. That way we can act fast. In other words, if something happens in the next week, we could, I think, 12 hours for emergency or something? 24. 24. So we have 24 hours to have a board meeting. Okay, the next thing on the agenda, and I had it moved, is, I'm surprised he isn't here tonight. Mr. Hunt's letters, they're on the program of 7B and 7C. And maybe George can start it off with explaining how the letters got here.
Point of order.
Yes.
President Kellogg. I know I'm very new to this and new to Brown Act, but it seems to me in the couple of months that I've been reading about the Brown Act, somewhere in my study, I read something about a past member of the board could not put something on the agenda for 13 months since leaving office. Now, it's not that I don't want to take up these motions, but any action we take might be invalidated if we don't follow the Brown Act. Could you answer that?
Yeah, I can try. Director Jacobson asked a similar question before we convened. I think what you're referring to is a prohibition against lobbying. And the way the statute defines it is lobbying for compensation on behalf of another party. So if we had a developer, a former director that left office and immediately started working for a large developer that then wanted PID's approval for its development project, and that former director was receiving compensation, that's when that anti-lobbying prohibition would kick in. In this particular instance, Mr. Hunt's not here. This is his agenda item. I would like to speak to this again on another item of business when we tackle the policy revisions, because I think this is a difficult thing for staff to just automatically have to put items on. So we can spend as much or as little time on this as you like, given.
Policy revisions were in the consent calendar.
No, I'm on 7G, PID Policies and Procedures Manual.
Okay, we can
Thank you for that
do it
clarification.
later.
Which ones
Let's
are you
stick
gonna
with
tackle
what we're
first?
talking about now.
Which one are we going to tackle first?
They're in order, so it would be director's health benefits. I want to have
7B.
George explain how they got on the agenda.
Well, like Dustin said, the current PIDU policy puts me in a tough spot when a public member requests to have an item on the agenda. My historical response to that has been if it's relative to PID business, it goes on the agenda. We've had one in the past from Mr. Zuccolillo, and then we have these ones before. So I present it to you. It's yours to handle or dismiss as you see fit.
So we're on page 62.
Page 2,
61.
That-
61.
Well, starting 61, but the motion is
61,
on
yeah.
62.
Yeah.
So I have a question also for Dustin.
I,
Sorry, am I out of order?
I'll just explain since we're, Robert's Rules of Order are this way. If you take no action on this, no motion, it dies. If you take a motion, there's no second, it dies. If you take a motion and a second, then it moves to being in discussion, and then we vote on whatever you as a board decide to do. So that's the general principles of Robert's Rules of Order for anything that comes to us, especially something like this because of its political nature. So what's your,
So my question is, through the chair to him, could I make a motion of my own on this issue, or do we have to?
No, yeah, absolutely. You can.
As long as it's related.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion then, that the health benefits be withdrawn for the three newest members of the board, and grandfather and the two other directors until the end of their term.
I'm going to look to staff here. I don't know that ACWA-JPIA permits that.
If that's your pleasure, we would have to investigate
Yeah.
that with JPIA. You can terminate health director benefits with a resolution and a 60-day notice, so it wouldn't even happen tonight if you so choose. Whether you could make a selection between directors, we would have to investigate that with our insurance carrier and bring that back to you for consideration.
Could you do
I'd like to speak to it.
certainly it's open to the board right now.
Okay.
Something like a motion when you guys get through here.
I waived that when I came on the board simply because I don't need it. I make enough money and I have enough medical coverage that it's not an issue. However, our time is worth something, and intelligent, valuable people value their time. And I feel if you're going to get people to come here and spend their time to help their community, that's some nice compensation. And if that individual needs that compensation, I think they should have it if they're in kind paying for it with good quality service to the community. So I don't think we ought to rescind it. If you don't need it, don't burden
Don't use it.
the district with it, as I haven't. But I have no problem with somebody coming to the board that is not as fortunate as I am and needs that and is willing to put out the effort to earn it. So my position is we keep it, and I think we've got a good board here, and I don't think anybody's going to abuse it. And that's what I have to say on the matter.
Thank you. Any other board members? Does anyone want to make a motion?
She already made a motion, but
Here, second.
but it was immediately called into question by attorney.
I'm sorry about that.
No, that's all right.
You could adjust the motion to direct staff to investigate that if you so wish, or
Well-
you can let it die, your decision.
I make a motion that we didn't.
But we have to deal with hers first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Ann's
thought we
motion to do.
resolved yours, but go ahead.
So I could make the motion that you would investigate this for us about the grandfather.
And then, yeah, we can bring it back with
I
additional
make that
information
motion.
if you like.
Okay. I will second that motion then for you, and then we can
Is that going to
visit.
invalidate any further decision-making on this?
It just tables it until further notice.
It doesn't commit us to one way or the
No,
other?
No.
No,
Status quo stays the same.
information.
Okay. I'll second that motion.
I've already done
Oh, you
it.
did?
But you
All
can
right.
third it.
Thank you.
Let's vote.
Any more comments by the board? No? Public? Yes.
My name is Frank Cott, and there was a law. I have it in my files. I don't have the date here in front of me. There was a law that said, as the time the law was passed, anyone on a town council, water board, and so on, okay, who was not receiving health benefits, they were not able to have it. And then that law has been rescinded. Now, the function, as I understand, for that law was this. You are elected people to serve the public as elected officials. This type of benefit is if you were an employee, and that regardless of whether it's this or any other kind of benefit, okay, become an employee is contradictory to the election process. And on top of that, the issue of health insurance, very expensive now. If I'm not mistaken, I think the manager had said here not too long ago that it was costing the district $1,850 a month for each one of the health benefit programs. So the point here is the part of the reason the law was originally passed is to make sure that the function of an elected official is supported, not to be paid as if an employee. And I think that this is a very good point. Would it be possible that some people who come to be elected who are self-employed, and why are they here? To serve as an elected official or to serve themselves to get this benefit? Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Yes, ma'am.
Jenny Ryan. Cliff, I like what you had to say. I've been looking at Ann's stack of papers there and all her little sticky notes. This is just from my observation of coming to some of the meetings. This is a huge job. You're having meetings all the time, giving up your time, studying all these procedures, how to do a second on a motion and all of that. So, and I think several of the board members have elected to pass on that benefit, but I think it's very nice to offer it possibly to board members in the future if they'd like to have it. I think it's just a nice perk because of all the work that you do, all the knowledge that you need, and all the time that you spend serving the members of the community. Thanks.
Yes, Frank. This is
I realize real quick.
No. I'm just going to caution you. When you talk now, that'll be the last talking you can do on this issue. See, Frank, you can talk again, but this should be the last time you can.
I understand that. Okay. I should have added the fact is that you, as board members, are being paid a certain fund for attending meetings. Okay? For the purpose of attending meetings. That's part of the elected process. Okay? So it's not as if, when some people say perks, it's not as if you're not receiving something under that benefit. In other words, it falls right in line with the elected function. And this is very extremely important. This is going to the national election, in fact, about why did people elect who they did. Okay?
Mr. President, may I make a comment?
Just a minute. Frank served this board and was a member of this board for many years.
Long time.
So he is knowledgeable about it. But something's changed here. And we'll ask the attorney and George about it a little later. Dan?
Just for the benefit of the public, if you did not look at the agenda, Mr. Hunt had placed a couple of items on there saying that because we had run saying that we were not going to take this and so on, then he's demanding that we take it, make it unavailable. Well, 4 of us, to my knowledge, are not taking it. But Mr. Kellogg never did promise that. He didn't run on that issue or anything, and so that's the reason. I think I like what Ann said, and what she's trying to do is say, we promised, he didn't, so the attorney is going to look into the possibility of altering that, making it so we can't receive it, but they can. But, yeah. Anyway, and so we have chosen not to, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we should take it away from anybody else in the future.
Thanks, Frank. I don't know if Dustin, were you on our attorney at the time this was passed?
No, but my firm was. I can answer the question.
Okay.
The Irrigation District Act, which governs PID, is very specific about compensation. It says directors shall receive compensation not to exceed $100 per meeting. And I know Director Jacobson has become irritated with me because you would like to waive that. And I've said no. it says you shall receive compensation. So we've compromised, and I believe you're getting $1.
I'm getting a penny, actually.
A penny? Okay.
So maybe
So
only 99 cents.
you are receiving compensation, not to exceed $100. You do not have a hydroelectric project, so you cannot increase the director fees by virtue of that. There is a relatively new provision, and I'm sorry I can't tell you the date it was enacted, but there is a provision that says you can also receive director health benefits, the same as if you were an employee. And at some point, was it before you, George?
No, George was
After? So what would you say, 2005, 6, something like that?
No, like 10. I was here.
You were here? Okay. So at some point, you made the election to include that as part of director compensation. And ACWA-JPIA has very unique rules on who has to receive it, who can waive it, those types of things. So that's why we just need to check into it.
And George, can you flesh out the history of this?
Yeah, it was brought forward by one director, Ken Hunt, and whether it was 07 or 10 or whatever, for the same reasons that have been cited. Directors put in a lot of effort and time and studying, the hours they put in before the meeting, and he felt it was appropriate that a person be compensated as much as the law allows. At the time of discussion, it's a two-sided issue. It's a nice benefit that some people could run for just for that benefit. You hope that's not the case. But the flip side is you hope that a small business person in our town that needs to spend every hour they can at their business would be willing to give their time, and this is a good benefit that would make them appreciated for putting in that effort when they're trying to live on and run a small business in this town. So it's a complete board decision whether this stays or goes, or it's all up to you guys.
And Kevin?
Yeah, I can. I'm not going to give a history on where it came about, but I'll give.
You're financial guy.
Yeah, but I'll give a little bit of a history of maybe why it's not accepted through ACWA-JPIA. One is the discrimination. You can't discriminate between one employee and other employees. The second of all is that we get a 4% discount based on how we have signed up for our health insurance, being that we offer health insurance to everybody within the family and every employee. And we don't offer the opt-out provision for employees because we would lose our discount through ACWA-JPIA for that. So there's not that cash in lieu opportunity, so there's two obstacles that might be in our way on it. Would be the discrimination obstacle, and then the 4%, the discount that we receive by making sure every employee has the availability.
Yes, Dan?
Is there a chance that we might consider as a board having the person on the board divulge themselves of the benefit of the insurance, but cover everything? Not like an employee and get a portion of it paid by PID, but themselves join the plan, but instead of part of it being paid for by the ratepayer, they just simply contribute everything towards it. Is that a possibility? Because then, like you mentioned, a small business person, their own private plan is going to be very expensive, but if they were to purchase it through you guys, instead of the ratepayer paying a portion of it, they would just pay everything. Is that even a possibility?
That's a question.
Yeah, I think, we need to ask ACWA, but I can tell you, and this is also an item in 7G, what immediately jumps to mind is collection.
Yeah.
I mean, what happens if a director falls behind, or something happens, the director has an illness, and they're not going to be attending meetings, they're not going to necessarily have alternate revenue coming in. Then what do you do?
I guess the same thing as if you were a private business person and you didn't make your 2 or 3 payments, you're out. But I don't know.
But with us as a group,
yeah,
it doesn't work. So once PID says this person's on,
you're on.
January 1st, they're on through that whole calendar.
Oh, yeah, it's not
Or
true.
till they
I was
leave.
hoping we wouldn't open this.
But I think the question that you have will go back to our ACWA-JPIA, and we'll ask those specific questions.
I'd like to add one thing. I believe, and I obviously have employees, and I have a medical plan for my employees as well. And the way I believe you're going to find out it works is that you pick a plan and they set a rate and you say how much you're going to pay and how much your employees are going to pay, and they can opt out of the program if they don't want it, or if they are in it, they pay the same amount, and you can't make one employee pay a different amount than the other. The state doesn't allow that. I don't think the federal government does either. But they will not allow you to say you have to pay more than that individual. They all have to equally contribute. So I think it's going to be all or nothing is what you're going to find out.
Kevin, if you said there's no opt-out, how is it that we are able to opt out? Because I
Board
opted out.
members can opt out at the very beginning, but I don't know if the district, you as individuals, are unique in that way. And that's why I don't know the question, if the question is answered specifically on what I'm saying. But you as directors are unique. An employee cannot opt out, but a director
Thank
under
you
their
for
bylaws can. Yeah, but I don't know if you can force it.
Yeah.
See, I think it's a voluntary opt-out that you have the availability. I don't know if there's a forceability of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Would we not save some time, and possibly if we just made a decision to allow this benefit if a board member said they needed it? Because we're all on the board now. We're going to be here for a while. We've all said we don't need it. But I would hate to tie the hands of a future board member and have to go through this thing again. If there were an individual that says, you know, I'm intelligent, I know they can use my help, but I can't afford to be on the board because I got to work this part-time job to get medical insurance to keep myself going. And maybe that one thing might kick it over the edge and they'd say, yeah, I can do this. And so if it's a benefit, and I think anybody who really does their due diligence on this board earns it if they so desire and need it, you know. And I think maybe we're tying our hands a little bit if we try and go down the road and investigate, you know, singling out. Yes.
Want to make amendment to the motion?
Or else withdraw it, one or the other.
Can we do that?
Well, my answer to that is the town council doesn't get health benefits as far as I know.
No, they don't.
And to me, it was all about fiscal responsibility, that this is something we may not be able to afford. And, you know, over the course of time, it's a lot of money if all of us take it. I mean, we're in a very nice situation now where we're not, but then I guess I would be leaving it for a future board who all were taking benefits to decide.
But it's kind of like a slippery slope. I mean, then we're going to say, well, maybe $100 a meeting is too much because they're on 3 committees and plus this one monthly meeting, that's $400 a month, and maybe we should take that away too. And
Well, that's nothing compared to $25,000 a year per person. You know, you have 2 people on.
Yes?
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
I absolutely like what you said. But I kind of hear what you're saying too, Cliff. There's sort of peer pressure going on here and public pressure. You know, we all have heard from the public and you know, we made our decisions. And so I think in the future, you know, there are things that come up and if you have a life-threatening, you know, situation, you certainly would wish you had that insurance. There's no doubt about it. And it's going to happen to all of us at some point. So I kind of like the idea of just leaving it. We've already saved the district quite a bit of money, and I'm going to call it peer pressure, directed pressure, whatever you want to call it, but anyone that gets elected in the future is going to be looking at this and hearing about it. So I think there is a underlying you know, perception there that, you know, it's something that you really, really have to need to accept.
I want to add to Mark's thing on a practical matter. Frank, you don't have any time left. Larry Duncan served on this board for over 10 years, had major heart surgery, and was laid up for some time. But I don't think Larry could have afforded all the money that went into that heart surgery otherwise. And so the insurance was very valuable to him. Rick Hall, who was on the board and actually voted against this, and after he was off the board, lost the election to Doug Plesher, he came back and tried to get as much health insurance as he could. He was coming to every 3rd meeting. He didn't come regularly in a commuting to Nicaragua. But what I found from his family after he was off the board, the reason he ran against Doug, and after saying he wouldn't, was he was using health insurance. He had an accident of sorts in Nicaragua and had a brain tumor and so forth. So he was getting adequate care because of the health insurance. My own circumstances, I have Medicare, and my wife just recently applied for it, and so forth. This would not keep me on the board or take me off if it was changed. But at the same time, I agree with Mark. It's an advantage to people of directors, but I've not known of any director running for office saying that they're running because of the health insurance. So,
I think Ken Hunt benefited quite a bit from this health insurance
well,
program.
Ken Hunt lost his wife to, what's the disease, George?
ALS.
Yeah, and we didn't know at the time that we passed this, that this was a situation that came out a couple of months later. So it was a great help to Ken while he was on the board, because nobody survives ALF, and it is an expensive disease to treat.
I'd like to clarify that.
Okay.
I do not believe Ken Hunt proposed this because of a illness of his wife. That occurred long after he started receiving
Okay.
benefits.
At any rate, there was another director who didn't plan on having great health expenses, and he proposed it, and it passed. So what would you like to say?
Susan Nightingale, if I understood what Bill said at the beginning, if this is not voted on, it can just be dropped, and if that happens, then the four of you don't have to collect the health insurance, and Bill can, and we don't have to make any motions or do anything. If we just table it, it'll remain the way that every board member is most benefited, because the four of you don't need the health insurance. It's a benefit to Bill at this time. He's been a faithful servant of this board, and if we just table it, it just remains that Bill has the insurance and you don't, and it doesn't preclude anybody else from ever having the insurance. Or if there's an emergency in one of your situations, but we can just table it, and then there's no issue. If I understood him right.
That is correct. If we take no action, it dies.
Right.
Right, that's one way to resolve it, but I think the other way sends a message that it's okay. And
I've got
there's
one
nothing
more
wrong with that.
public member who wants to speak, and then we'll cut off public comment.
The motion was to study it and have staff tell you which option.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion from the board members? Anybody call for the question?
Question?
And all in favor of the motion, say aye.
What's the motion?
Do you want to repeat it? It's what she said, my second to her motion, yes, and that is that they're going to check on something on it, or do?
Well, Georgiana can repeat it.
Yeah.
Just so I'm clear, it was to have the 3 new board members excluded from taking health care and the 2 others grandfathered in until their term expires. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was for all, yeah.
Investigating that.
Yeah,
Right.
investigating, yeah. So the result I was looking for is all board members would not receive health benefits going forward.
We will try to get all the information we possibly can relative to director
And,
health
you
care.
know, if it doesn't, I just gave the motion,
Yep.
and if I see that this board does not agree, collegially, I will vote with you to make it a majority against, It's
Well,
fine.
that's-
I'd like to have it
Yes,
investigated.
Kevin, do you want to say something?
No, I just was clarifying what that motion exactly was. Yeah.
Well, you said 3 and 2?
The 3 new board members excluded from health care.
Uh-huh.
The 2 grandfathered in until their term expires.
And then going forward, no.
And going forward, no health insurance benefit
But I've already
available.
waived my health benefits.
But you're still, you would still have the option until your term expired.
Yeah. And again, this will come up at a subsequent meeting, and we can take action or not, so,
Well, right now, we need to vote on Ann's
Okay.
motion.
yes.
I thought we already did.
No.
Nope, no vote yet. We're still waiting on a vote.
Okay. Let's, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. So it passes 4-1. The next thing on it is water rates submitted by Ken Hunt. Review and consider withdrawing the water rate structure currently in effect and replacing with the water rates structure that was in effect on February the 1st, 2016, considering issuing a cash refund for all ascertained overcharged amounts. Action may be taken. George, comments?
It's the same, my comments are the same as the previous item relative to that. I have no comment beyond that.
I have a comment if the board will permit. This causes me heartburn.
It ain't going to happen.
Okay, well, you know, we have contracts out there, our financing, for example, we have rate covenants. If you want to roll back rates, you need to roll back costs, and when you roll back costs, you may run afoul of some of your contractual commitments. So that would be my caution, is if you're inclined to move forward with this, at least let us look at some of our financing, maybe even some of our employee MOUs, because we may be solving one issue and causing another.
I will add a comment.
You want to add a comment?
Please reject this idea and just move on.
That this would be very detrimental to the district in all facets of the financial aspects of the district.
This would be a good one to die for a lack of action.
That's the board. Do you have any action you want to propose? Nothing? Okay, it dies from lack of action. I'm sorry, no public comment needed. Now, we will go back, as Ward has asked, about public participation. Individuals will be given an opportunity to address the board regarding matters not scheduled on the agenda, although the board cannot take action on any matter not on the agenda. Comments will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Opportunity for public comment on agenda items will be provided at the time they are discussed by the board, and comments limited to 5 minutes per agenda item. Does anybody want to bring any agenda item that is not on, sorry, it isn't an agenda, item that is not on the agenda before the board at this time? This will be your one opportunity. Yes, Ward.
Yes, thank you, President Kellogg and the board. I was in attendance here on Monday morning for a meeting, and on Tuesday I received this message anonymously. Don't shoot the messenger. George has heard this before. PID is a bunch of fools if they think we believe them about the safety of the dams in Magalia and the lake. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Yes. Lauren.
Thank you. Lauren Harvey. I'd just like to step forward and say it sure is a pleasure to watch you folks work. This sure has went smooth.
That's where the other flaws, actually.
And it's absolutely amazing. So thank you a lot. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure most people in the community appreciate it. Thank you.
You're responsible for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. I know you normally don't pass out compliments. So it's appreciated. That item's taken care of. Approval of checks. Kevin's on.
Just like always, I'll take questions. They just to let you know, the check register is very similar to prior patterns. There's not a lot of.
You might get, since it's only the second time new members have looked at it, can you give us an explanation of it?
Sure. This is the detailed check register for the month of accounts payable checks that come out of PID. In there is the description, the dates, the check number. And if there's any question on any specific item, you have the opportunity to ask us. Sometimes we don't have the answer, but we hopefully normally do have the answer. And if we don't, we will get it to you.
I want to explain part of this. At the top of the first page, there's a thing here. It says invoice date, invoice due date, and you can look over at the time it was paid. This is what I asked to be put on the agenda several years ago, and it's continued. And it shows the larger invoices at the district level and what time they were paid and what time they were submitted. And I've been asked to take it off, and I've insisted that it stay there. And I don't know if it's been any benefit or not, but at any rate, it's my attempt at...
It's anything over $5,000.
Yeah, anything over $5,000. So, and George has the ability to spend it up to $5,000. Any questions? So we'll start same order. Dan first, if we would.
My name begins in W. Can I go last? No, I'm kidding.
Want me to say wetland instead of dam?
No, that's all right. Just kidding. On page 43, I had a question. Upper 2/3 of the page, it says sodium hypochlorate, 12 point blah 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 percent. You water professionals, is this all working? This is good stuff now.
Sorry, where are you?
It's the check. The vendor is yeah,
For the sodium hypochlorite for chlorination at the plant.
and it's all working well. Everything is.
Yes, yes, it is.
You all are happy with that. Good.
I should make sure you're all aware. In
Get into that one.
Jim's report,
Yeah,
we
we'll
did
get
bid
there.
it out, so HASA will not be our future chlorine.
Oh, thank you.
We'll
Yeah.
get there.
On page 44, the vendor, the third one down, is Sierra Pacific. I had a question about L&L surveying. Is that done? Is that finished? Is that the total cost of their entire surveying of the...
37.
I believe that's the entire
Done.
amount, yeah. They generally don't bill us progress pay. They usually wait till they're completed and then bill us.
And then, Kevin, I'm going to just come talk to you about the fire hydrant fund.
Okay.
But those are a lot of little questions about it.
Perfect. Yep, no problem.
And as for me, I have many questions, but because I'm new, I will not take time here, but I will have a private meeting with you, Kevin.
Beautiful.
My first time I did that, too.
I just had one question about the dam surveillance, and maybe we can't talk about it here because it's secret. But I was just kind of curious.
But the guy
I saw
charged.
some surveillance today at the B reservoir. So
You're talking about a check?
yeah, it's on page 43. It's
43, yeah. I saw that one.
Yes.
Gentera.
Yeah.
So we do I think it's a 3-year contract to have professionals come and work with us to do what's called dam surveillance. Staff does as much as we can, so there's some surveying efforts and things like that we do and provide information, levels of water, et cetera, to the consultant. They come out and review the dams. They're usually here when Division of Safety of Dams does their inspection as well, and then they provide the board with a report on the dams themselves, and complies not only with giving you guys information, but also DSOD getting an annual report that's required.
Okay, great. I was thinking it was video cameras or something. I wasn't sure. So
Okay.
got it. Thank you.
I only had one question on page 45, on the PG&E. Is that $14,820.32, is that the PG&E bill for the water filtration plant?
Yep.
Yes, it is.
That's a monthly,
Yep.
Yeah, and it goes up and down through the summertime. It's
Summer is higher.
a little bit more than that.
okay. And then the only other thing is just a comment, those damn fireflies are on the checklist
We're
again.
going to cover fireflies.
Yeah, we are. That's all I had.
I've been looking here to see where you usually write out a motion somewhere. I don't
On
see
the
it in here.
agenda.
Huh?
On the agenda.
On the agenda.
On the first page of the agenda.
I can put it.
Approval of the checks.
Oh, okay. Yes, I want to read it. I want to make, okay, thank you.
Put it on your screen, too.
Okay, consider approval of general fund check numbers 50217 through 50304 for the month of January 2017, totaling $388,492.74, exclusive of voided check number 50257, and authorization. Here's my problem. This comes up, and I've been bringing this up for years. An authorization of a similar amount, allowing or adjusting extraordinary budget or board-approved items. I would like the Finance Committee and Kevin and sit down and talk about this, because I don't think we should approve, all these checks have been approved in advance. You couldn't change any of them.
They've already been written.
They've already been approved by this one line, and the money's spent. Okay? So basically, you're not doing anything unless you can find an error somewhere, or a questionable expense somewhere, but you have no authority over it. And my problem is that this board is elected for fiscal responsibility. That's our prime responsibility as a board. And this has been going on, it was passed some years ago when I was on the board, and I didn't even realize what we were doing at the time. And later on, I've become aware. because if you go back and question any one of these, the money's gone, folks, I'm sorry, and you don't have any authority over it. Now, Kevin will want to speak now.
No,
not debate it. We'll
yeah, I'm
just
not
talk
going
to
to
the
debate it. I'll
committee.
just let the finance committee that I will call something to discuss this exact issue for you guys, to get you the history, and then whatever you guys decide you want to go for.
And the committee can report back to the board, rather than us talking about it tonight.
Just very quickly, didn't we discuss this once before, though, that our policies and procedures manual stipulates the amounts that can be written a check for, paid out of the monthly check register, unless it's an item that has to go out for bid, or for whatever reason it's above the amount that the manager could approve without prior board approval, and anything above that had to have our approval. So maybe we just need to reword that so it makes sense.
I think that's what he's after.
With-
Yeah.
Yeah, because
We can do that.
We can work
that's
on
the
it.
only way we can run the business. We can't wait for approval.
Yeah.
We'll work together.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the proper way. It should go to the committee, and you guys talk about it, and then come back to the board with it.
And we are the finance committee, so we'll
Yeah.
do that.
When you call it, I'll come.
Do I have a motion approving, I just read it. So, do we have a second to the approval?
I'll
of the
second
check?
that.
Second's been made. Any more discussion?
It wasn't, Bill made
The
the
public
motion.
to talk? Anybody in the public want to have a comment about our check register? I think you all have copies, at least I hope so.
It's up there, too.
Do you have copies of it out there in the audience, what you were provided with?
It's online. We don't print the entire board packet for everybody.
They only have the agenda out there. They don't have the full packet.
I would think in the future, we need to have the check agenda
So, a
printed
lot of,
for the public.
paper.
Yeah, it may be, but the idea is transparency and have them look at what we're doing. And if they're ignorant of it, which they are right now, there's no way they can comment on it. And it's, how many people are here tonight? 3, 6, 9, 12, 18, 23, about 25, 26 people. That's times the amount of paper it's there.
I got an idea. Maybe we can address that on the finance committee, because possibly what could be done is make 2 of them, and then people can kind of circulate them and look at them
Okay,
during.
you guys bring it
Yeah.
up on the finance committee.
I know we do that at the senior center with some of the heavy paper items, is just have a couple of them circulating, let people look at them.
Kevin's got that on his agenda, I see that.
Now, okay, how do we do on the vote?
So we hadn't voted yet.
No.
Okay. Well,
I second it.
all in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. Kevin, you've got treasurer's memo.
So this month I did a treasurer's memo. It's the board meeting happens to be the earliest it possibly can. So a lot of like the bank statements and investment statements and a lot of that stuff doesn't even come in until the agenda's required. But there is no extraordinary items this month. The actuals versus budget are right on task. Where our cash position is at $2.33 million. It is rising, which is a good thing.
Yes, it is.
Our debt service, we've paid almost the whole fiscal year's debt service already, and we're only 7 months through the year. So we're doing real well on that. There's only going to be one more debt service payment coming up in this next fiscal year. The consumption budget is below what we had estimated based on what we were looking at projection-wise of $335,000. We still have some heavy months coming forward in June and May, June area, but it just matters on weather. If it rains like it's raining, we're not going to have much consumption revenue. So that'll be something that we look at when we come forward. I am in the process of getting next year's budget ready. That will be going to the Finance Committee for pre-look at it, maybe some formatting if they want some formatting, some preliminary numbers going forward, how they want it presented to the public, if they want to have some workshops and how we go about that. So that will be coming forward. The one thing that I've been working on a lot, and I know it's a hot topic in the district, is the retirement plan. The retirement plan fee issue and how that was overcharged, and then where the correction's coming forward. And it's taking some time, but what I am doing is I'm making sure that every calculation, first of all, I understand it, and then I'm getting it very detailed out from the provider of how the calculation was done. So we've been going back and forth, me and Rick, back and forth to the retirement plan provider saying, tell me how you did this. Why did you do it this way? What's your philosophy behind why you did it this way? And making sure that each individual has the tools available to them to recalculate the fee themselves. So how the fee was calculated is pretty simple. They charge you this much, well, we're going to put that back in, and then we're going to take out the correct one. But it's how the interest was derived on that fee amount that was overcharged, how that's being put back into their account, and how it's being calculated. And so at this point, I just got off the phone with Rick today. We are working with the provider to give them each individual a button that will tell them how that, it's called a weighted time average return on investment, how that was calculated. Show them how that was calculated so that they feel confident that they're getting every dime that they're owed. So right now, all the monies have been put back into their accounts as of January 31st. So everybody's got that. Now we're working on getting everybody a spreadsheet that shows them the calculation and giving them the tools to recalculate that whole spreadsheet. Once we do that, we're coming to the Finance Committee. So this was discussed within the Finance Committee, and I'll kind of cover that now too, is that we are going to come to the Finance Committee with the philosophy of how they calculated it and get buy-in not only from the Finance Committee, but every employee that says, thumbs up, I agree with the calculation. Then we are going to go to the outside auditor, and the auditor will then have what we call the agreed upon procedures to go forward and audit each one of those calculations. But until we have the procedures that are agreed upon, they have nothing to audit. So that's why we're doing it in this multiple step process. Because if we audit something and then it comes back to the employee and they go, well, I don't agree with how it was calculated, we just audited something that has nothing, that's garbage. So that's why we're making this multiply step. The other thing is we created an RFP that was in the last board agenda that went to the Finance Committee. We had about 7, 8 employees in there with us when we met over the Finance Committee, and we discussed going out for RFP. There was, during last board meeting, there was discussion that a lot of employees were not thrilled with changing from the prior provider to the current provider, FTJ, ICMA to FTJ. I made a suggestion to the Finance Committee and to the employee group that maybe if all the employees would rather just have the old provider, then maybe we just go directly to them and ask them for a presentation first, and then if that's something that the majority of the employees are up for, then we've kind of saved ourselves a lot of time going through a full RFP, going through a full presentation from all these people, and we can kind of just make the change from one to another. And so I was thinking that was going to be an easy change or an easy call to go, hey, can you give us a proposal? Well, they're not that open to giving us a kind of fly-by-the-night proposal. So what they've suggested is, and we've scheduled it, and I'll let the Finance Committee know this now, that on March 7th at 3 o'clock, ICMA is going to be making a full presentation to all the employees about their services. And they're bringing a vice president of customer sales from Washington, D.C. out, and then the local rep that will be handling the account if there was a change to the account. So that's where we stand on that. So there has been a lot of workings going on. It's just not as fast as we had hoped it, but I feel like it's not something we want to rush.
That was March 7th, 4 p.m.?
3 o'clock.
3 p.m.
Any questions of Kevin by the board?
Yes, I have one. Have you kept the employees up to speed on the progress of what you've been doing?
Yes. So I've been working through both the union group and working both through the management group.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Kevin? Open to the public now. Any questions over the retirement and the other parts of our financial condition, how much money we have and so forth. This is really the place where you find out how well we're doing financially as a district. So, and I've asked it to be put in this part of the agenda simply for that, but so far not much questions here about it. Does anybody have a question about Standard & Poor's downgraded from District A+ to A stable? It was some discussion about it at the last board meeting, but since it's, I know one of the people that has applied for a public position on the committee has some sort of economic background. I don't know if she's here or not. I guess not. Okay. No questions for the public? You're getting off easy, Kevin.
All right.
That's it. Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
George Barber, General Manager, Fire
Can you
Failure
make a motion to
Response.
accept it?
We usually get a motion to accept the.
I move we approve the treasurer's report.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous decision. Okay. Firefly Failure Response, George Barber.
Thank you. We discussed this at the last few meetings. You've received a lot of information, and I know that our newest board members have been in attendance and following what's going on, so they've had a chance to review those past memos. There was a lot of technical detail and a little confusion at the last meeting, so this is my attempt to try and kind of give you a little history, a little simple analysis, answer any questions you have. But I want to make sure the public knows that this system is working really well. It's providing a great service to the district, and the response of the information to the district is very, very good as far as automated meter reading systems go. So while we're having issues with some of the pieces and parts, it's been a very good product that's provided a lot of customer information and service to the customer, and it's helped our conservation efforts considerably. My estimation to the tune of about the same amount of water as Magalia Dam would hold if it were restored. So it's been a great tool. I tried to kind of give you some estimates on time of different efforts if we were to do a battery replacement or just a straight change out to the new Fireflies. Give you the numbers that these are worst case. When we say 8,000, that's probably the worst case we'd have to deal with. We can go through a process to test each one before we decide whether to switch it out or replace a battery. But I think if you look at it, it's probably in best interest of the district to just make the change and move on and not try to diagnose each one of these. The other decision you have for us is deciding whether to purchase stealth readers with or without a warranty. So if you were to pay the extra $20 for a warranty, it's a 20-year warranty, but it's 10 years replacement, 10-year prorated. So kind of like when you buy a car battery, that second 10 years, the benefit starts falling off pretty quick. And you can see the cost difference. You know, if you take the chance that these are going to continue to perform well with consulting with other districts, they have a pretty good track record on failure. Excellent one compared to Datamatic, that's for sure. So going without the warranty is not a big risk, and basically every fourth stealth reader you purchase is you're getting it at not much additional cost. So hopefully this was a little easier to read and follow, and I'm open to answer any questions.
George, the cost with the partial warranty, that figure you have is the same as with the full. Shouldn't that figure be $736,000 instead of $896,000?
Yeah, that's what
Yes, you caught my.
Thank you.
caught
And
my
also
error.
the partial warranty, I understand, is 3-year warranty?
Well, it's about 3 years right now. It's the remainder of the original Datamatic warranty. So there's about 3 years left. As time goes on, that gets less and less. Till 3 years out, there is none.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to speak to this, being so I was the one that brought up the issue of the batteries to begin with. So, a little history for the audience. When I came on the board, I noticed an expense for these things called fireflies every month, and they were amounting to tens of thousands of dollars. And when I asked why, they said, well, the batteries are failing. And I said, why don't we get the company to replace them? They said the company went out of business. I said, why don't we take them apart and put new batteries in them? They said, we can't, they're sealed. So I went and got one, I took it apart, found the batteries, ordered some, put them in, thought I solved the problem, okay? So I came back to George and I said, here, tell your guys, quit replacing these units, put new batteries in them. Well, as it turns out, as we do the research into it, we find out that the reason the batteries are failing is the boards are defective and they're pulling too many milliamps, and so the life expectancy of the battery is shortened. So it's not necessarily the battery. Yes, the batteries are going bad, and that's why the units are failing, but the batteries are going bad because the life expectancy is drained because they pull too much power. So with that new knowledge, had I known that going in, we might have had a different take on the situation, but I guess that's how we find out. So there are some that the batteries are defective and we could benefit by changing those out. There are some that we could change the batteries out and then we find out later on that we're going to change the batteries out again because they only lasted 2 or 3 years because they were pulling too many milliamps again. And from working with the maintenance department, I also understand that these new Zeners, these new readers, stealth readers that they're getting are much better. They communicate better and for a further distance. And so they're actually performing a better job when they're replaced. They get less lost data. They get more data input than the old Fireflies were giving when they were working. So that's not to say that ones out there aren't working, but when they fail and they were replaced with the new piece of equipment, they actually do a better job than the one they replaced. So having that information and looking at the costs related to changing the batteries only to find out that maybe we're going to have to do it again, which probably wipes out any benefit at that second time around, and then we got to replace it with a new stealth anyway. It probably does make sense that when they fail, we replace them with one of the stealths. So I think I'm going to go along with that as a viable option. However, it's a no-brainer on what we pay for. And in fact, I asked the staff to go back and ask, how much are they without any warranty? And they said, we won't sell them without at least the existing warranty that's left on the readers you have out in the field, and that's going to be $65. And it's $85 with the full warranty. And I said, what's the failure rate? And they said less than 1%. So if you take the difference of $576,000 versus $736,000, and you take that and you divide it by the 8,000 readers we got back out there, well, it's only about $1,600 difference. And so I think we're getting hosed if we, it's kind of like that thing when you go out the door and they say, you want to buy the warranty on that, the additional warranty? No, because we'd have to have a 25% failure rate to even break even on paying the higher price. It doesn't pencil out at all. So my recommendation is when they fail, we replace them for the $65, and when they don't fail, we don't replace them. We leave them out there till they fail. And when they fail, then we trash them and we replace them with the new stealth reader with the $65 cost.
Can you make that a motion, please?
I think we all agree with that, too.
You agree with that?
That's how I concluded it also.
Discussion on that? We beat this thing to death, and I got to tell you, I've spent hours and hours and hours on this. So has the maintenance
Still
guys.
needs a motion.
Yeah.
Make a motion.
I make a motion that we accept, let's see, George said,
There's a couple of suggested motions at the back on page 56.
I move approval to direct staff to replace failed units with the board-selected stealth reader, and I want to add to that, and that we only accept purchasing them with the remaining warranty, or as they say, without full warranty, and not purchase the stealth readers. And if we have been purchasing them at the $85 each, we stop, because we're losing money on that.
So just to let you know, too, the price of those are locked till 2020.
Good.
So we locked the price on
Great.
a 65 till 2020.
Okay. So I move that we accept George's recommendation with the caveat that we stipulate that they only buy the stealth readers with the without the full warranty. Partial warranty.
Second.
Second. Dan's going to second.
I did already second.
Now,
But Mark can.
discussion, and we'll open
Dan
it to
can, I
the
don't-
public, because I think the board's all in agreement.
Yes, thank you, because President didn't allow enough time for comment on this at the January meeting. I will bring this up now and update it by an additional 30 days. My comment then would have been, early on, a month before that, the street sign at the corner of my street and Pence Road was stolen. It's a popular woman's name, and it was gone. It's happened before. But it just so happens to be the same place where the PID repeater is located. So it disappeared as well. So there went the batteries. Here we are 2 months later now, and guess what? My ACWA-Hawk works just fine. So my question, before we spend so much money on so many replacements, do we really need that many in our community? And remember, we have a whole lot fewer trees now than we did when we put this system in. So I got to wonder, maybe we could cut back by 10, 20, or 30% of these, save a lot of money, and still get a good signal from ACWA-Hawk to be able to bill us and know exactly how much water we're using. Thank you for your time.
I'd like to answer that question for you.
Good.
There are two different types of units. One of them is sort of a collector that collects the signal, and then we have the slave units out that piggyback that signal from one another until it gets to that one that probably got stolen. Okay, so yes, we need the units out there to transmit the readings from each meter, and then they are sent to a collection point. And George can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that what they're going to find out is if these work that much better and they get a signal without a unit, I'm certain that they're not going to just leave it there and add to their misery. They're going to clean up the system as it dictates based on the improved performance as they get more of these Zinner stealth readers out there instead of the older Firefly with the poor technology. Am I correct in that?
Yep, you got it.
Thank
One
you.
of the benefits of the stealth reader is its radio signal carries farther. So when we're looking at replacing the ones on the signs, we are evaluating and hopping over and eliminating some through that process.
But Ward, if you want, we could cut the rest of the trees in Paradise down, and then 3 of them would work. Is that what you're? No, I don't think so.
So,
Any
okay.
more comments from the public, please?
Yes.
Hearing, okay, Bob.
Yeah, we're good.
We got another
Nope.
comment.
Bob Dickinson. I've been looking into these meters for a little while as well. And back in December, the books that you guys technically get every month, in that book there, it showed the report that you folks had made that the meters had shared the same issues with the Fireflies and the different water companies and what they did and what time they came online and when they started failing, etc. And so I got a hold of all these water companies with the exception of one of them. And what I found is that some of the stuff that was purchased in the early 2000s were in Arizona and New Mexico and Southern California. And in these areas, when they purchased them, they got them in the time frame of about 2002 up until about 2008, and they started experiencing the same things that we had going on here. They got out of this business and some of them went back to manual until they came up with something different. Others went into a Badger, etc. And it seemed like to get to California, the northern part of the state, it didn't start until about the same time you folks did, about 2009 to 2012 time frame. And locally, Sacramento, Folsom, these areas, City of Hanford, they all had failures in the same timeline. But the information was out there that the ones that we have were failing. They were built in Malaysia with the board issues. That's the root cause was when they started advancing more than they could produce, and they chose to go out of business. And the contract that some of these people had to do their work, different water companies, chose to do some of it on their own. Some of them contracted the work out similar to what you did. As an example, Sacramento chose a company called Ferguson. And Ferguson took the contract, and the contract was for roughly 55,000 meters. And when they got into it, by the time they got into the neighborhood of somewhere around 25 to 35,000 meters, they started having failures in the change-out process of less than a year. And they found out it was in the Malaysia boards. And when they got to that point, because of the contract and the type of agreement they had, they found out that the verbiage that they had made with that contract with Ferguson was on the dime to take these meters and make it right. They had a little litigation and some issues for a period of time, but Ferguson manned up and they took care of business. And they went to I think the Stealth Zenner setup, and they also paid all of it from the original cost. They covered 55,000 meters total cost from putting them in, taking them out, putting the new ones in at a cost of $13.7 million. That comes up to about $250 a piece. And if you do the math on what we did here in this town, we paid about $500 or slightly under retrofitting and buying new meters at the cost of that. And the same contract that you got here was with a company named Chevron. And with this company named Chevron, we had a chance in here, and it looks like it got missed, that if you had a failure with the meter at the substantial date is when they go online, when they start getting in service, they have a date they call that. And at that particular date was June 5th, or May 5th of 2012. You had 1 year of a warranty from that point on, even though the whole thing may not have been completely done. And so there was a time frame there when the failures were starting that we didn't act on that. And I was speaking with Sacramento, they had the same issues. They pushed with Ferguson long after that year, or the time frame of their contract, and they went back after him, and Ferguson made it right. And I just don't think that we looked very hard or did a very good job of researching these meters to start with. And we're in quite a boat here and quite a lot of expense. And furthermore is, when we started having these failures, we missed another chance to put Chevron on the line here to do what Ferguson did. We missed another boat. That's my comments on it. I have all the data, and I'd like to pass it on to you folks to do further research. So whatever it takes to get it in your hands, let me know.
Does the board want to ask questions about?
I would suspect that Chevron thing is way beyond any kind of...
So I hear what you're saying. I don't know the details of Sacramento and their arrangement, but the Chevron arrangement predates me. It was very odd, I'll tell you that, because Chevron recommended Datamedic, and help me out if I'm wrong here on my facts, but Chevron was
So
the
did
consultant.
Ferguson.
They recommended Datamatic, and they basically prepared the contract in everything. But the contract was a direct contract between PID and Datamatic, rather than the typical general contractor, subcontractor approach that you would normally see in an arrangement like this. George has asked me maybe 2 years ago, to look, do we have any cause of action against Chevron, even though our contract was with Datamatic, who declared bankruptcy and that is now no longer a legal entity. And I looked at it, and we do have a claim, but it's just candidly not a very good one. In open session, I don't want to get into the details about that. But
Well, it says in a warranty issue arises on any equipment or material installed after 1 year shall first contact the manufacturer directly and resolve such warranty issues, and customer acknowledges that the manufacturer shall have sole responsibility for these issues. If the customer cannot resolve such warranty issues itself after reasonable efforts during the manufacturer's extended warranty, Chevron ES shall be the customer's agent in working with the equipment and material manufacturer in resolving any equipment or material issues.
I'd like to make a recommendation. I think if you think you have some valid data there that might help us in recovering some expenses, I'm sure that Dustin would be glad to take that off your hands and look into it.
I'd like you guys to have it as well.
Okay. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. What was done in the past, obviously, we have no control over.
What was done in the past is probably coming in the future too. If we let these opportunities slide by and don't do our due diligence and research.
Well, I can assure you that the due diligence and research on the new company and its stability and our contract with them and the quality of their new reader is far superior to what we did have. I looked into that in detail with the maintenance department when I evaluated whether or not it was worth changing batteries or changing these units out. And I personally feel that is going to be our least expensive way going forward, and it will improve our system. But if there's some money to be recouped from that prior loss, and you have some documents that might help us in that, we'd certainly like to see them.
Here is the stuff out of the December, all the cities that were on in the December book. And those are the ones I called, all the contact numbers, contact names are there. I really want you guys to follow up and look at the data that I got and make up your own decision.
Okay.
But I really think it needs to be more than one of you, because there's plenty of them there, and there's a lot of comparative notes.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, you have my assurance that we'll look into it.
Did Ferguson actually install for Sacramento? Did they do the install?
Yes, they were the Chevron.
Okay.
You want this, or you want me to give it to Dustin,
Did
or-
Chevron install for us, or we did our own install?
Uh-huh.
I've got to wait till somebody.
Sorry, I'm asking because this is old business. I know.
Okay.
Chevron basically brokered the deal, and they were a warranty cop.
Okay.
We had a company that came in and did all the installation that was experts in that and did a great job. Ferguson came in and designed the system. They were the ones that came up with the highways of repeaters, the locations of the gateways, things like that. And so Datamatic did honor the warranty all the way up until they went bankrupt.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob.
If you don't mind, Georgiana, if Bob will give you some information, you copy it for the board members and for the staff, whatever he's giving you, so that all the board members will have a copy of it, and also staff. And I'm sure Bob would gladly talk to any of you about what he's found. Just give it to Georgiana,
This is
Bob.
where it came from. Just several pages.
Okay, thank you.
He brought his own copies.
Yeah, and we appreciate very much Bob's efforts and work on this and doing the research on it. And I would say right now he's probably the expert on the old contract. We still have a motion on the floor.
Thanks, Bob.
No,
we passed it?
We've passed
Okay.
going forward on the Zelf, or the Zinner.
We haven't voted yet.
No, we haven't voted.
We haven't voted
Haven't
yet.
voted yet, okay.
No.
For a change,
Previous,
I'm right.
previous thing.
All right.
But, well, we voted, you second, but then he opened it to the public, and that's where Bob was
So
speaking.
it comes back to the board if anybody wants to make any more comments. Then we go to voting. And for the public, we're going to go to a break as soon as this is done. So what do we have? Any of the board members want to comment on what they just heard?
We've already moved and seconded, and I have no
You can
no
still
further
comment
questions.
After you move and second.
No further questions.
No more questions? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 It's unanimous. Thank you very much, Bob, for your presentation. And now we'll take a 10-minute break. And Georgiana, would you please call us back after 10 minutes? Now, for your information, if you go through this door and all the way through, there's another bathroom. So the bathroom, and I didn't even get a chance. So we're going to have a break a little earlier than we did. Prioritizing Community Concerns Committee, public members. We thank everybody that's applied to it, and we will go through and select out of this group members of the public that looks to us would be best served. Now, one of the things that occurred at the meeting is Dan and I will go through this list and decide who serves. The prioritizing committee was assembled, I should do this later in the committee report, but I'm going to do it right here, that we were assembled, and the idea of the committee was a basic thing of prioritizing items on the agendas for the board to consider about changes we're proposing in the district. It was not meant to be a communications committee, nor was it meant to be a financing committee. And the people that brought their interests to the meeting and dominated it were primarily talking about communication inside the community and improving our district communications. That those people should apply to the community relations, and there's the two directors, and they both now just agreed that they'll take public members. So you need to apply to them, take your resumes and your information, and some of them are extensive and very good. And then also I would hope that the Finance Committee would agree to take public members. So some of the applications in here are very excellent on financial matters. And that's where they should be to help the district. And it looks like these volunteers really want to help the district. But we're not going to accept members that were wanting it to turn it into a communication committee, which it is not. And it doesn't belong there. So we're going to go ahead with the people we know on the list, what we want to do. Yes, George, you're going to tell me I just did something wrong, probably.
I'm going to tell you that the district rules, policies, and procedures require the entire board to appoint public members to committees.
Okay.
So there's no rule in place that allows a committee to accept public members.
Well, at
So
the next meeting of the committee, we'll go through this and we'll bring it to the board then.
What you're saying is it just needs to be agendized.
Well, it's already here on the agenda.
But it's agendized for your Community Concerns Committee. So populating the Finance Committee and the CR Committee, we just need agenda items for that.
Okay, prioritizing Community Concerns Committee is what it is.
Right. So if you want public members on that committee, according to PID's rules and regulations,
Okay.
the entire board must select those people onto the committee.
Okay, well, in this case, the committee is going to select and bring it to the board.
That's up to the board. I'm not going to argue. I'm telling you what the district policy currently states. So if the rest of your board would allow that, that's up to them.
Part of the confusion of this committee is the news release you put out, George, explaining that people could come and do all sorts of things with this committee, long-range planning and so forth. That was not the intention of the committee. It's only for a short duration. We moved it from an ad hoc committee to standing committee because it had, if we had public members. And our intention was to get people on the committee, public, that would contribute to the prioritizing of the community relations. So I think it should be straight now that they're applying for a prioritizing community relations committee. They're not applying for a citizens committee, nor a committee that's going to do public relations or news releases. That's that's another committee that presently doesn't have any public committee members.
Would one way to solve? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that. Does a standing committee with two directors and public members require all of the Brown Act?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so any standing committee that we create would require a tremendous amount of additional documentation, notification of meetings, similar to what we have to do every month here when we meet. So might I suggest that we make it an ad hoc committee? I believe an ad hoc committee does not have to conform to the Brown Act.
What turns it into a standing committee is when you have public members, non-board members on the committee. By law, it turns into a standing committee.
In the past, haven't we had ad hoc committees with public?
Not that I'm aware
like
of.
Like on the Paradise Lake, were those?
Those are standing committees.
Those are standing. There were no ad hoc committees with public input.
No, there was
okay.
Ad hoc, but Botanical Gardens have got turned into a standing committee.
Okay.
We've had them for separate. If we make it an ad hoc committee, then it's whoever wants to show up as a public member and speak to whatever business we're conducting, but they won't have no ranking as a volunteer for the committee.
Might that still not be the best avenue, as long as the ad hoc committee directors connect with the public and they make sure that they know the place and time and that it's an agreement with them so that they could be?
From Dan.
And to keep in mind that a standing committee doesn't necessarily, Cliff, have to meet regularly. You don't have to meet monthly. You can call your meetings as to whatever you might choose. If I understand the purpose of this committee that we're proposing, it would be something that I could envision would meet maybe several times, and then maybe for 6 months not meet if we are meeting their intended goals.
Weren't their intended goals to prioritize what they thought the current events should be prioritized at?
Yeah, but
bring
you see,
that data to us.
Correct, but that's what I'm saying. They aren't going to necessarily meet every time, all the time, constantly for the next 5 years, all the time.
New agenda items every time we meet, and how are they going to convey that to us every 6 months if we meet every month, and they want to prioritize the agenda items that we have to work on?
Well, they make their suggestions to us, and we, follow through if we can. And another thing, Bill, in regards to, I think what you're saying is, if we were to place this committee, we do have some very talented people that have applied beyond the 6. Maybe we could take some of those people then and agendize it next time and accept their positioning on other committees. Would that solve that? I don't.
I think that would take care of the problem. See, what happened at the meeting, the people that wanted communications, wanted a citizens committee, which is a misunderstanding of what the committee was about, dominated the whole thing. The people that came to do prioritizing and had some information tried to speak to that, and they were overwhelmingly ignored by the rest of the committee. And I simply, as the chairman, let them go to see what was going to come out of it. And I went away with the feeling that this committee failed because of this. Now, Dan would like, we're both on the committee, Dan would like the committee to continue, but it can't continue with people coming and trying to create a citizens committee out of it. We don't have citizens committees in this district, and overwhelmingly take up time in the meeting and promote this and promote communications. They need to be over at the communications community, which already exists. It just doesn't have any public members on it. And others in here have talents from their resumes that I read tonight, for economics and other things, that their talents could be used at the Finance Committee. I'm not trying to turn them down. I'm trying to get them off of this committee where they're not serving, because they have ideas which the committee was never intended to do. And I tried to explain that at the meeting when we first started and later, and nobody was listening. And I'm going, this committee, if it continues the way it is a failure. There's no point in continuing it. And you commented when we formed the committee that you thought that somebody would attempt to take it over as a citizens committee, and I thought, oh, no, that won't happen. People accused me of being naive, and boy, I really was on this one. So as far as I'm concerned, the committee can go away. We'll get the business done some other way. Dan wants to continue it, so I'll respect his wishes and continue it. But if it's going to continue, people that serve on the committee must understand that it's not a communications committee, nor does it have anything to do with financing. And it only happens to be like prioritizing an agenda. And we wanted to have people from the recall committee because they had been successful at getting the director's recall with an 80%
plurality.
So we, or at least I did, and I think Dan agreed, we wanted to listen to them and get them on the record. And then after a while, it would go away. The committee probably wouldn't exist for a year, I don't think. So that's how we got caught into this. But the news release that went out talked about future plans for the district and wanting to serve. And I know people applied and came to the meeting with understanding that's what they're doing, and it wasn't the case at all. It was a poor community relations thing. By the time I saw it, it was too late to do anything about it. So that's where I'm at and all. I better stop talking. I'm just talking on and on.
I would like to say that this is one of the reasons that I voiced my concern at the last meeting about creating this committee, because of the complexity of the entire thing. Not simply maybe the wrong idea about it, but the complexity of adding another layer of obligations for documentations and notifications and everything that goes along with it. And that's why I recommended that we hold off on this until the public had the opportunity to see that the current board was going to communicate with them, was going to use due diligence and prioritize appropriately. That's why you hired us. That's why you elected us. And hopefully you have the confidence that we're going to do the right thing. And I really think we need to back up from this, and we need to say that we genuinely appreciate their effort, and we'll reach out to them if we have concerns. But at this point in time, I really think it's adding an extra burden to an already busy workload that we have, trying to work this out to hopefully, if we're doing our job right, come to the same priorities that they're going to come up with anyway. So, and I'm certain that if we don't, those individuals that had an interest in this committee will certainly be here at every meeting, standing up there telling us that we're not doing what they thought we should do. So maybe...
You want to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we table this committee, or if, I'm not sure where we're at on the last, did we say we approved the committee and now we're just asking for public members, or did we?
Approve the committee with public members was the idea of the first meeting, and the first meeting was to explain to the public what the purpose of the...
How do I word a motion to unapprove that?
Would it dissolve the committee? Yeah. So you would make a motion to dissolve the committee.
I make a motion to dissolve the committee based on the comments that I just gave.
Do we have a second?
Not for me.
If I make a second, can I comment on it?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Now it's comments by the board.
Okay.
Then we'll have public comments.
I first was thinking this could be a problem, but I got kind of come around here in the last week. It's only been a week. And, I think it could be a good thing. But I wanted to see a cross-section of the community, and I think we got that with the applications. Thank you for the letters of interest. I think we did get a good cross-section. And I've gotten to know some of the people on the recall committee, and they're wonderful people. But I do think I'd like to see a mix of, people with different interests, different viewpoints. And so that's my comment.
Okay.
But I'm actually come around to thinking could be a good thing. But maybe we should table it for now and think a little harder on it, come up with some other ideas, and maybe massage it a little bit.
Any other comments from the board?
So I will second his motion.
You'll second the motion.
With those comments.
Ann, do you have a comment?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, Dan?
You heard my comment.
Yes, I know.
So I'm in favor of the committee. And again, if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. We can dissolve it later. But I'm just one vote. As a standing committee, as we potentially set it up, as it is agendized.
Okay, public comments, please. Identify yourself and come
Yes, thank you, Ward Habriel, and I did attend that meeting, and I made a comment then, and I'll repeat it now. I do believe that for an entity like that, public input is a necessity, but that's part of the reason that you're here and we're here. And the problem from the history that I have is that most of these seats have been empty for a long, long time, and you didn't hear from the people that either appointed you or elected you. And frankly, the easiest way to do that is to have people fill these seats like we're doing now. So we've done something within our community, create enough interest so that people will actually come and be able to stand up here and find something to talk about and contribute to the management of this organization. And we have the potential, just like on the agenda tonight, a private citizen agendized something for your discussion. People can do that. So thank you for your time, and I think we're doing fine.
Thank you, Ward.
Members Martin Nichols, again, it seems like your fundamental question is whether or not you want a public standing committee subject to the Brown Act in meeting. An alternative might well be to have your two board members committee and just hold a series of public hearings where people can come and talk to you regarding what their concerns are, and then the committee can deal with that and come forward. I mean, you'd have to do that in a public setting. You'd probably have to announce those meetings, but you wouldn't have a standing committee. If you've already formed a standing committee, you got a procedural question of whether or not you can just table populating it, or you really need to cancel it or abandon it.
Any other comments?
Can I make another comment?
Well, let me get through public, and we'll come back to the board more.
Sorry.
Let's try to keep Robert's Rules of Order a little bit. Any other public comments about this committee business?
Good evening, you new wonderful board. The intention, I believe, of the prioritizing committee concerns was initially to give a voice to the people that were on the recall committee and the people that they represented. There were several issues that were, the reason for the recall, and we wanted to have a way of assuring that those would be addressed. And that was the purpose of trying to pull something together so we could say, okay, community members, you voted a new board in. These were the reasons that you went and you did the recall and you did your voting. Just as a reminder, that these are the things that are of a concern. And it seemed that was the best way instead of going and trying to talk to everybody, although I think I've done a good job of that too. But it's a concern, if not it's somewhat of a responsibility for all the time that these folks have put in to bring this about, to not just walk away. And I would agree with you, Cliff, that we do have that confidence in you, but we still want to have our voice to say that, that we have put this forth and we want you to look at it. And I did present, I don't know if you gave anyone those little sheets that I gave you, Bill? Okay. Well, But it was just, some real basic things. One of the things that we had wanted to talk about did get talked about tonight, the automated meters. And some of the issues that have been concerning us have been related to management and management decisions. And when we were doing the recall, the issue was we need to change board members because the board members were in lockstep with management, and management was making some decisions that had gotten us into financial difficulty. Mr. Dickinson brought up the issue tonight about the ACWA-JPIA, or the automated meters, and you can see that there is a real issue with the contract, the initial contract. That was something that we weren't aware of. We just knew that it cost, on our old list we had $4.9 million, and we still owe, $3.5 million after 6 years. That strikes me as a problem. Another issue was the new office and storage yard. Well, we've kind of gotten over that because that's an issue that we can't, it's done, but it was money that was spent at a time when the agency didn't have money. The other big issue that we want to address is the employees that are in upper management that are making over $100,000. That was one of the things that people didn't know before. They didn't know before the 218 that was an issue. They had no idea what people were being paid. And so that is another issue that we were trying to look for as in the prioritizing. And probably the biggest one that is looming before us is the $20 million, 15 to $20 million. It floats back and forth. I'm not sure what the figure is now for the water recycle project. And I've heard, that it's been pushed back a little bit. It's been changing. They're taking this part out. And I don't know because I'm not on the in part of what's going on. And I hear George saying one thing one time and then another thing another time. And I can't follow the track. And I don't have the information to do it. At one time I requested some information through the special way to get public information, and I got a form that looked like it had been produced maybe just for me. And at another meeting shortly thereafter, I was told that the information on that had changed. And I'm wondering, how did it change? And so those are concerns, and those are financial concerns. And that brings us to the other issue that we're talking about is possibly doing a forensic audit to kind of clear things, maybe even for the new board, and to find out if there is something that funding-wise that is irregular, and we don't know how else to do it other than to present it just as a request to the board. And one thing that kind of always gets brought up in a lot of comments is the replacement of pipelines. I see that over and over in comments that we're not replacing pipelines, and I see the report come out on the board packet, and it says we've completed 20 feet. Then the next month we've completed 20 feet. The next month we've completed 20 feet. They're not doing any pipe replacement, according to the reports. I'm not out in the field. I don't know what they're doing, but I'm looking at that figure, and that's a concern to me. So that was what the committee was initially for, is to, to kind of put some traction to these things that we wanted to do, and not let it just kind of get lost in things like a 3-acre plot of land up at the lake that's in escrow. I'd like to see that get dropped. There's things that, that we can stop maybe, and, kind of get to the issues that are on the front line. That's called prioritizing. You take care of these issues and don't get bogged down by smaller, non-essential issues that don't fit our budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. I might make a suggestion.
My name's Angela Kassler. I think a citizens committee would be very valuable. I know personally that I had no idea about our water company until the rate increases and those big, very large meetings. And then I went to some of the meetings to learn about the water that was held by George. and I really learned about how our water system worked, and it piqued my interest. And I am not part of the PID recall committee, and I wasn't even aware that that was happening. But I do believe that it would be beneficial to this board to have a cross-functional committee too of very talented people that are retired, that have been managers for years, that could contribute to the long-term sustainability of our community. And when I look at Paradise, I've only lived here for 9 years myself, but this is one of the places that hires highly skilled talent, engineering to maintenance and fleet management, and the very complex water system that's managed here, and it's precious. And as we talk about PG&E's contract not being renewed in DeSabla and all of the changes that are coming up long term, I do believe that a citizens committee will give you a broader perspective as well, because I think that it's important to have a fair and balanced board that really has all sides of the story as well and has many different perspectives to consider. So I do hope that you will consider perhaps creating a scope of work for this committee to really focus on, that it is not all over the place of concerns from the community, but ways that we can create solutions to make sure our water company can survive the future. Thank you.
It's nice to put a face with the name. Thank you, Angela.
Wally Schmidt, Pinch Road, Division 3. 3 quick observations. Number one, the recall passed by 80% of the votes, but only because of the low turnout, only 23% of the voters. So your mandate is not all that large. I'm personally really uncomfortable with the notion of setting up a committee, especially to give a voice to a particular segment of the population. I think that's not really the way the system is supposed to work. And as to the point of this committee is for this and that committee is for communications and whatever, I just want to make the observation that every single decision that you guys make, every single comment that you make, contributes to community relations and has financial ramifications. So it's all interconnected. Thank you.
Barry Bunty from Paradise. My concern, and I stated this on Monday, is that there's no specific charge for this committee. What is this specifically supposed to do? You could state that in one paragraph, I'm sure. But we hear about communications and finance and prioritizing concerns. What is the committee supposed to do? And then Bill talks about there being a committee. Hell, you haven't appointed it yet. Where is this committee? And what is it supposed to do? And I would also like to echo Wally's comments about the recall committee. There's 27,000 people in Paradise, and the vast majority of them did not vote for the recall committee. So I think you need to give a voice to the other people in this community, not just the recall committee. Thank you.
Can everybody hear Rini all right?
I'm very distressed at the diminishing of the recall committee being 25% of the population. Oftentimes, people represent a faction, and it's not just them and the 2 people behind them. There's a lot of people that agree with them that aren't standing behind them. I think there's a statement where they say if a person, a senator or somebody receives one letter, they count that like 100. You know, it's not just the numbers of people.
This isn't the U.S. Senate.
It's not a debating. Barry, you just got to talk. Let her talk, okay?
But all I'm saying is don't diminish what 25% of the people did.
I'm saying
that is a great amount of people of this.
5 minutes?
No, just wait till she's through.
So I get so tired of you diminishing. You weren't out doing anything to counter it. We were out there by ourselves. There wasn't any opposition to us. There wasn't anybody doing any other committee work, supporting the other candidates that were sitting up here on the board. You know, so I just don't diminish the work that group of people did and the 25% of the people that voted.
Thank you, Rennie.
Okay, Barry, we'll give you 3 minutes, and then we're going to go back to the board.
It's not worth it for 3 minutes. Give me 5 or nothing.
Oh, that's a good way to cut you off. Thank you. What do you, Lauren, please?
Lauren, yeah, everybody knows me. But I'd just like to say, yeah, that's true. The recall committee's kind of got big heads. But let me tell you, we had a lot of power. A lot of you folks are sitting there because of us. And the reason we had the amount of power that we had was because of the community was behind us. It wasn't because any one of us can arm wrestle you and win. It didn't have anything to do with that. It had to do with the number count. And I'm sorry that some people didn't feel like the recall committee was the right thing to do, but we had more than the majority. We won. Think about how 218 works. 218 works, it's automatically assumed that 50% of the people want something. And you have to get out 51% of the vote has to come out. It's not assumed that they don't want it. It's assumed that they do want it, and you have to show up with 51% to make it different. And the board used that against us, is why we got to where we was. So I say the recall committee does have quite a bit of power as far as in the community, and you guys living happy up there without living sad. It's not, we could work on getting rid of you if we didn't like you again, but the thing about it is we'd rather all work in harmony, and so let's try to think up something that's harmonious for all of us, and just remember, some people are activists and some people aren't, but the people that are activists are the people that talk to the most people. Thank you.
All right, back to the board, and Mark has the first visit.
Wow. Well, I just was going to comment that Ann and I are on the Community Relations Committee, and we have some ideas already.
Okay.
And I think they're positive ideas, and where the public can come and meet the directors. We're hoping to get all the directors involved. We'll let you know on it when we get it out there. But so on a regular basis, we go out into the community. So there's some ideas floating around here that on existing committees that I think would be hopefully be an improvement and get the public involved. So thank you.
Okay,
that's it.
One small comment in regards to Ward, what you said. I kind of agree with you, but kind of not. Unfortunately, when a board does a real good job and people have great confidence in them, nobody shows. And so you might remember a statement that I made at the other meeting is, if we can get 6 or 8 people on this committee, then hopefully at least that 6 or 8 will be the ones that we have here. And hopefully those 6 or 8 will invite another person or two, and so that we always have somebody here. That was part of my incentive in doing that.
Any other board comments? Cliff, you're not
Yes.
commenting. What?
I was waiting my turn politely.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, first of all, I don't dismiss the effort that was put forth by the recall committee people. At least they did something about what they felt was an injustice, and they didn't just sit home and complain about it, and I give them credit for that. So I don't dismiss what they've done. Their effort did improve things here, and I can see that. They've improved the personality of the board, in my opinion, and made things a whole lot more amiable than what they were. They were not pleasant before. So I give them credit for that. Also, I hope that they chose us wisely and that they would have the confidence in us and know that we just talked about how much effort and work it is involved in the last 2 days, I've done nothing in my office except work on PID stuff. And that's taken away a lot from things I should have been doing. However, I made that commitment. But I don't feel that adding an unnecessary complexity to an already busy task that we have is really going to accomplish something. If any public customer of PID wants any board member to prioritize something, they simply have to pick up the phone Our phone number and our email contact is on the PID webpage. They can contact myself, or I'm sure any board member with a concern that they have about anything. And if we feel that it's important enough, we'll agendize it. We'll bring it up for discussion. And if it's an action item, we'll put an action to it. And more importantly, we'll convey to them our intentions, and they'll be able to see whether or not we followed through on it. And I would prefer that much more than trying to create another committee to do what I think we were all elected to do and that we're capable of doing. And you have the way to communicate with us to give us that opportunity. And then if we don't perform, then maybe we come back and look at putting us more to task. But I still think that, I mean, I'm not moved. I appreciate what everybody has said, but I'm not moved from my position that it's, at this point in time, just added complexity that I don't think is necessary.
At this time, we've got a motion on the floor. Would you, Georgiana, would you repeat the motion to us, please?
Motion by Director Jenkins, I'm trying to find it here, and second by Director Sola to dissolve the committee based on the comments that, Cliff had made about adding another complexity layer.
But what action did this?
Dissolve the committee.
Dissolve the committee. And it's
Okay.
a motion and a second.
I'll ask the last time, board comments? I'm not going to ask community because we've gotten a lot of time into this and voiced, I think, almost everything we need to. So now we'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 No.
No? And are you aye or no?
Aye.
She said
So it's 4-1. You're in my position for a change, Dan. Okay, the committee is dissolved. Thank you very much. What do we got next?
7D.
7D.
7D. For a guy that's supposed to preside over the meeting, I get a little bit carried away and then I get out of it. D. Special meeting, the Board of Directors, Manager Barber considers setting a special Board of Directors meeting to present an update on the proposed process water project. Action may be taken. Okay, George.
Yeah, the purpose of this agenda item is to try and get a meeting that's solely focused on the process water recycle project. We received today a 70% design estimate of about $15.4 million for the design proposed project. We need a little time to try and use that information to give you some kind of idea on the potential cost of the alternative. So we're looking, probably the earliest would be the week of the 27th. But let me just tell you what I'm envisioning. Dedicated time to this very important project. Staff would be there to help explain the alternative and answer any questions. AECOM would be there to explain and answer any questions on the current design process. I would be asking the State Water Quality Control Board staff if they'd be willing to come so that you folks can hear directly from them what our situation is and any questions that you have, so that we can try and formulate a decision on how we're proceeding forward. So that's the purpose of the meeting, and I think we finally got information, and the next week we can put it all together that we can have a meaningful conversation with the board on this project.
Comments from the board? Questions for George?
Is 3 o'clock in the afternoon, is that an appropriate time, or is that too late for some of the people that have to come from somewhere else? Or?
No, it's fine for us. I mean, state board staff, they've came to an evening meeting.
Okay.
They're willing.
All right.
As long as their schedule meets whatever date you pick. I'm sure they would make that 3 o'clock time.
And the only reason I mention that is because when we have these morning ones, it really cuts into my work schedule, and so I like to try to avoid it if possible. That's it.
Would this meeting just specifically for this project, because you mentioned in the packet that we might also look at Site B, revisit that at the same time? Or should we just specifically devote it to the recycle project?
It's fully up to you. So we can handle B Reservoir at that meeting probably rather quickly, whether you want to proceed or not. I gave a tour to Mark and Dan today, and certainly would like to get Ann and Cliff and Bill out to the site and answer any questions. But we can handle that business probably rather quickly.
Then it might be nice to try to combine.
That's what I was thinking.
I'm sorry, are you done, Nan?
Yeah, and for me, I was thinking March 1st, Wednesday, like 2 weeks from today.
Mm-hmm. Works for me.
Yep. Any questions? George, this is, you're wanting to call a meeting where we would have an action item of voting on whether or not to go forward with the recycle versus the alternative plan? Is that what I heard you say?
That's one action, potential action.
So prior to that, could we not get some kind of a more detailed update as to where you're at? Because I know I went to Regional Water with you and we spoke about enlarging the settling ponds, changing the structure of that, putting in an out-of-spec tank, eliminating the clarifier, and lessening the cost and the footprint and everything. But since then, I haven't seen much other than that you guys are working with plant personnel and yourself on the alternative plan. If you're going to ask us to come to a meeting, and there's a big gap in there between the last time we talked and what have you guys done, and I'd certainly like to be able to chew some of that up a little bit and think about it before I have to come to a meeting and make a decision on something in that short a period of time.
Generally, we make the meetings, action may be taken so that you have that ability, but you don't have to. It's fully up to you folks. So we'll get you as much information the week prior that we can put together.
I certainly think that would be helpful because even if I come to a meeting and we're not going to do any action on it, I'd certainly like to come to it prepared, informed, to talk a little bit more about it, knowing what you guys have come up with and not having to review it at the meeting.
The main thing is having a meeting to focus on the project, get you the opportunity to talk to the engineer, talk to the water quality control folks, what your next step are, table it for 2 weeks to another special meeting or whatever you want to do at that point. Sure. That's great, but it's just a matter of focusing.
I won't know what questions to ask the engineer unless I see the project. So if we could get some more details on, because you have some ideas.
Yep.
And we'd like you to share those with us so that we have a chance to review them before this meeting.
I'll get you all I can.
That's all I'm asking. Give me what you got, and I'm sure the rest of us board members have. And I'll have Georgianne give us.
I understand the position you're in and the complexities and the fact that we're going to be comparing a 70% design to a little more than an idea. I understand all that, but this is how we get this thing rolling.
Okay.
Is an additional week better? Is 2 weeks enough time?
Well, as long as I don't get the data 2 hours before the meeting, I'm happy.
Well, our goal is to get everything to you the 24th.
And the meeting would be when again?
The 1st.
The 1st.
Is when it's presented.
That's what she suggested.
Yeah, that's fine.
Which works for me.
As long as we get some data so we know what we're coming there to talk about. That'd be
And
great.
the time doesn't matter to me either, because as long as it's hopefully 3 or later. We could start at 6. I don't care. It's up to you guys.
Sure.
And can we invite colleagues from other engineering firms?
Yeah, it's an open public meeting.
I had a question, George. Was ACOM looking at that alternative, or is that just something
that was not in their scope?
Wasn't in their scope.
So, they're aware of it. They understand where we're at, and that we've got a new board, potentially new direction, but they don't have a task approved to do that work and take it any farther. And that's part of the question. Do you want AECOM to continue evaluating the alternative? Do you want to go out to bid to have another engineering firm look at it? It's completely up to the board.
Is there such a thing as have them do a cursory look at the idea of the alternatives?
I'm sure they'd be more than willing to do that.
For money.
Oh, I understand that, but I'm thinking of just a
I
broad...
hearing this, I'll have a conversation with them and try and eke out of them a proposal for some low-level look at it versus, or
right. That's
further on beyond that. Yeah.
I view.
I've got some comments and questions. In that report, there should be a return on investment workup. In other words, $15 million. How are we going to get a return on it? What kind of percentage? How do we run it as a business, not as an engineering project? There's some claims to recycling the water, so many acre feet, but it turns out the alternatives will do the same thing if we keep the NPDES permit. This project you're promoting takes away the NPDES permit, supposedly, and makes it a closed cycle plant. And Mark should be real familiar with it because it's basically a sewage plant you're turning it into, an overbuilt plant that exceeds what the needs are to take care of the chemicals and the aluminum. Now, I've continued researching the wetlands, and I find that the wetlands have new techniques or things that have been published recently that shows they control aluminum along with a bunch of other minerals in their work. It also will control the chemical use. I don't know where Cliff's is on his iron idea, but I think we need to look into that. We need to put test holes around the existing ponds that will show us how much iron is in the soil, almost if there's any accumulation of aluminum in the soil, because of designs we've had in the past. There's actually an existing design from another engineering firm that's in the records of this district, and it was a $2 million project, and that was the first stage we went. Then from there we went to $8 million. Then from there we went to $12 million. Now we're at $15 million, and some people have suggested $20 million. The district doesn't have the reserves or the money to pay for this. This is an excessive, expensive thing. We should actually put it aside, and look at these alternatives. Look at the wetlands, give it a fair chance. The wetland things that we had in the past were made up by George, and they were not something you'd want to consider. As much as I promote wetlands, I voted against them because they weren't financially sustainable. There was no return on investment. They had pipelines in them that were unnecessary, including going up to the closed now golf course in Magalia. All of these things I've sat on this board and listened to, and we had a board that gave George anything he wanted. So I'm saying, let's stop this. There's no reason to have a special meeting. There's reason to say, stop now spending time and money from our... We have no idea how much money our staff has cost. I'm not through. End on this. So we have, as far as I know, maybe Kevin has the records, but I haven't seen them. And so I'm saying a processed water recycle project. We have plans available on that are 70% marketed. That was given to us, 2 years ago, George? Year and a half?
70%?
Yeah, that's a thick thing. I've got it at home.
Earlier 2016, and they weren't truly 70%.
Okay, but it was 2016, so those plans are available for the board to look at without having the engineering firm do any more work on them. In other words, you can present those plans at that date to this new board who's never seen them, and without having the expense of a special meeting and bringing up the engineering firm and having him tell us how many more dollars we have to spend to get finalized plans. And I think if we use a return on investment, I talked to a manager of a water district today, and he's down in the valley. He's a new manager. One of the ways he manages his district is return on investment. Everything gets looked at return on investment. It does not pass with a good return on investment. It's dropped. And they're running their district very economically. They're getting things done. Everything goes out to 3 bids. The engineering firm here got the job with no bids, which I objected to at the time. And you can go through the bylaws, which I've done, and you will find that that's possible to do legally. But as a business, would you ever put out the biggest contract you've ever had without any bids on it? And so I want to address this now. This thing does not need to go ahead on any terms. We should be looking at alternatives, and we should stop throwing money down a rat hole. That's it. Oh, on the other project, B Reservoir Design Project, $500,000. Since the inception, and George has brought this to the board, I've asked, get an engineer to look at the existing tank and around it to see if we actually need to replace it. The tank the top of the tank was done when I first got on the board, so it's been overhauled about 10 years ago, and I remember it being a 20-year lifespan. George says it was less, but we have no study saying whether we should invest in it. He wants to replace it with concrete and get rid of the bladder and everything. Maybe that's a good long-term investment, but a return on investment on that, I don't think it'll work. There's no work done there. It's simply engineering study, and he's gone ahead with it without having, as far as I know, any engineer look at it or anybody that builds and services bladder dams of such go out on site and say, what's the maintenance on this? How long does it have to last? What more maintenance do we have to use to keep it in service? There's been no attempt to bring that to the board. I've asked for it in the past. We had a different board. I would hope under this board we'd start using the things called business terms, return on investment. I had Larry Duncan laugh at me for asking about that. And B Reservoir Design, return on investment before we go any farther with them, either one of them. And report back to the board on that. Get the board the report we had last spring. We don't need the engineering firm to submit another design because that's only going to cost us more money. And you can see there's drawings and everything else in there where they want to put tanks, pipelines, etc. Move things around. It's a very detailed plan. It's not to be thrown away lightly. And the district has paid an awful lot of money for it. So that's my opinion of this.
Is that the ACOM plan, an earlier version?
Yeah, an earlier version of the ACOM plan. The first one they submitted it's about 1.5 inches thick.
Are there major changes in the latest plan from here? Well, you already have the 70% plan now anyway, correct?
Well, we will by the end of the week. We have the estimate today.
We've already paid for it. He's going to have it. We might as well review the latest one.
Have we paid for it, Kevin?
Yes.
Yeah, so we might as well.
We paid in advance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've paid the contract up to about 70%.
Yeah.
So there could be a few more bills that are coming forward, but they've already been expended based on the work.
How much have we paid so far?
I don't have the number, but it's about $1.2 million, I believe, on that specific contract.
And how much have we added to the contract?
How much have we added to the contract?
Yeah, like the environmental impact study?
That the change orders, I don't have the top of my head of what the change orders were on that contract.
But I think they're around another $100,000.
There was some change orders associated with it, and it was for environmental things to get through the SRF.
Testing the water, for squeezing the water and to lower the turbidity. We had a $40,000 fee there.
That's out of my purview.
The pilot plant?
Yeah, the little pilot plant. Didn't it cost us $40,000 to bring that up here and test the water?
I don't remember the number, but that was done.
But we do have the plan 70%. It is paid for.
Yep.
It is going to be available.
Yep.
It'll be an updated version of what you have. So we might as well look at the latest thing.
Okay, but can we add to that a return on investment? It's
Yeah,
never
and-
been made, as far as I know.
I would like to be honest on the return on investment on something like that. I would like to work through the finance committee on that to get philosophy of behind that, because a return on investment, obviously you have your investment, but what's your return? Your return is some ambiguous idea that, you know, you're going to not be fined. So your return is not being fined. Well, what is that number of not being fined? You know, there is a little bit of recycling of the water also included in that. So that's where I would like to work to get some type of philosophy that this board can understand, because I don't want to bring forward my philosophy and then, you know, it's garbage, you know, or something like that. So
I'd like to finish on what I was saying. I wanted to address the iron issue because I think I brought that up before, but maybe I want to clarify that. Ferric sulfate or ferric chloride would be a viable alternative to aluminum sulfate and aluminum chlorohydrate if it weren't for the fact that we have high iron content in our soil up here on the ridge already. So the problem that presents is, even though the level of iron in potable drinking water is extremely higher than the level allowed for aluminum by the state of California, they don't care if we're putting in iron at a level that would be permissible. What they do care about is the total pounds of iron that end up in the Magalia Reservoir. And because the soil is already loaded with iron, we're maxed out. So they say, if you were dumping into a body of water that didn't have high iron content, that'd be a great way to go. It would allow you a lot more latitude. But we won't let you do that because you already got too much iron. We don't care where it comes from, it's already there, so you cannot add to it. So that's the reason that we have to go back to the aluminum, because the iron is no longer viable for us to use. Okay. So that kind of, it brings us back to the aluminum. So the iron's pretty much out.
Okay. I'm aware of the high iron in the soils. It shows up on soils report from the NRCS. I've taken samples that got wet. I was going to bring it and show you how you can put a magnet into that soil and it will be covered with filings. It's that strong iron. But instead of it being a problem, it actually will be the solution to getting aluminum out of the water. It turns out a galvanizing effect or others. Now recently I picked up another research paper that talked about taking several minerals, including aluminum, out with a wetland. And it was being done, it's been done around in this country. I found at least, I think I'm close to a dozen examples, most of them are on the East Coast, of actually this taking place. I'll bring you the research on it and everything, but the wetlands is as far as I'm concerned, I've got books on wetland that I bought and done research. I've looked on the internet. I don't know how many hours I've put into this thing, but as far as I'm concerned, it's a viable alternative that will cost back to this $2 to $3 million price range, which will give us a decent return on investment. Now, as far as saving so many acre feet of water, the water would go back in the Magalia Reservoir. You saved it. It doesn't have to go into a big storage plant. The problem with it is a matter of surging in the fall when they have the time when they're turning off the water treatment plant, and all this treated water has to find a home. So we build these big storage tanks that are used at a critical time in the fall that will be filled. But we can take that water, if it's treated and doesn't have aluminum in it at a high enough thing to cause, and these studies are talking about EPA standards that they're meeting with the wetlands. So if that is possible, and the only way we're going to know it is to test it. And I've been told for several years here, we're up against this deadline. We're going to have all these fines. It's back on the web page, along with George's thing about other projects. That those projects, like I said earlier, were not viable for a wetland because of the way they were put together. That, guess what? We've never tested it. They kept saying this engineering firm we have right now was going to look somewhat in it. They have a landscaper. They don't have anybody that works with wetlands on their staff. The other firms that came and gave initial bids on the working for a small study where there were 2 firms that brought wetland specialists, even had them on the telephone, and they were talking about 2 or 3 times more money than the $25,000 that we spent on this, the firm we have now. They got the bid. The first thing they did is badmouth wetlands, didn't do any serious research or anything, and told us they didn't have time to test it, that the Water Board was on top of us. Now we have 5 years on the Water Board, if I understand right, extension recently. We're not up against fines. The 2 fines that have been assessed to this district, $30,000 apiece, have been forgiven by the Water Board because we're continuing to work on the issue. They do not want to bankrupt us. $15 million of unnecessary engineering and water treatment and construction. If you look at the long term on it, you can get cheap money right now, but we won't be replacing much pipe to pay back that note. It'll be a 30-year note. And I think it's totally over-engineered and does not meet it. And the only way you're going to shut me up is you test it. Test the wetlands.
Okay. Yeah, Bill, on that issue with the recycle plant, the alternative that we're looking at is eliminating a lot of that. And a lot of it sounds similar to what you're talking about. We're going to put in an out-of-spec tank to hold out-of-spec water. Additionally, if we enlarge and improve the settling ponds, 9 months out of the year, we may be able to just take that water and run it right back into the headwater of the plant and never dump it in the McGilly Reservoir. If that's the case, they're willing to give us higher levels of discharge on the few months out of the year when it's heavy rainfall and low usage, and we can't exceed our 10% recycle going back in. They will allow us to dump those higher levels. And the aluminum that we recycle back in, if we don't take it out, is that much less aluminum that we've got to put back in the water when we process it again. And I know, I understand your position on wetlands. I want to put Ann on the spot because I'd like her to explain how, in her experience, some of the other water plants have dealt with aluminum and recycle and settling ponds.
Well, typically, you have a settling, your backwash water goes to a big settling basin with a chain of flights, and the sludge goes one way, either to a belt press or to evaporating ponds. And the supernatant goes back to the headworks. That's typical.
We have a plan that was made by a different engineering firm on bigger ponds. It was the first thing we considered. In fact, the board was voting for it when they came back for an $8 million plan because we were told when the water surges that they needed all these tanks and they couldn't hold the water and so forth. It sounds like you worked with the board enough to get that allowed. But that's what we were told, and then we started working on this massive plan. It's just grown like a weed as far as I'm concerned. But there is a plan. I've got one copy of it at home, where it talks about improving the ponds, putting a floor in it, having it set up where you can go in with a tractor to clean it, and putting some coagulants in it that will help settle out your the organic matter and everything else. And I thought that we had this in hand. I was on the board, and we had enough reserves at that time to pay for it. And I thought, boy, this is going to be great. So the next meeting, we go to the same engineering firm, after talking to George and the water treatment staff, came in with an $8 million program. Then that engineer quit the firm and went to work for a town in the foothills as an engineer. And then the next thing we had was up went the price, up went the size, up went the tanks. And so I'm saying to you, there is an engineering firm, there is a plan for doing mostly what you're talking about. And it's here, it's paid for.
Can you
It's
speak
in the
to
records.
that, George?
Pardon?
Can you speak to that plan on enlarging the ponds and improving them for settling?
That was an alternative early on. At the time, the direction was to get 100% recycle. So we did have issues with needing to add storage tanks, etc. There was concerns about weather, etc. It was a design that was kind of unique. I forget the term. It's a proprietary desking solution. And the only sites that our treatment plant guys were able to visit were in desert, dry areas. So there was concerns that it would actually function the same in our terrain and in our territory. But we have information on that early report. It's on the website.
Well, is it from what you've looked at since we spoke last and went up to the water, is it your opinion that improving the size and structure of the settling ponds and improving the way that we feed the water into it would give us quality of water that could be fed back into the headwater without further processing?
Yes, I believe that.
Okay. And is there some way that we can test that theory?
We can, I'd have to talk to the treatment plant people. We probably have some records about our current plant that doesn't really have optimized plans that actually meets the 2 turbidity rule quite a bit of the time. So that was kind of the basis of this whole alternative.
So right now, there are times when, even though we're discharging back into Magalia Reservoir, the water is clean enough that we could be putting it back into the headwater. Is that what you're saying?
I believe so, yes.
So we're fairly close to achieving that anyway.
Yes.
Did the sludge ponds ever work?
They, like I said, they do work in the summer. They do what they need to do. Part of the problem with the violations with the current pond setup is the aluminum doesn't settle out because it's not an adequate settling pond, so that's where we get a lot of the aluminum violations. And then the dichlorobromomethane, that's a whole other issue, but it can be dealt with.
All you need to do for the dichloromethylbromine is about a 10-foot waterfall. And this I've had from an engineer I talked to in Florida. Just aeration, and it has a very short half-life.
We've looked into that quite a bit. It's not quite that simple, but it can be stripped out.
And I think we can also do less pre-filtration chlorination and do post-filter chlorination, which we're currently not doing, which would get us way down below where we're at now.
Yep, I believe so.
I think the combination of changing that, improving the quality of the ponds, is going to give us the opportunity we're looking for.
Yeah.
And that's...
I mean, one of the paths of attack, and we've talked about this, and Jim's put the request for proposals out already, so you'll see them when we get them, and that's to evaluate the receiving waters and work towards another 5-year permit. That will give us time to explore options, try and fine-tune a pond. So while the alternative pond process doesn't get us 100% recycle when it's first built, it has the ability to get there over time. And it also gives us more data as it operates to help us fine-tune what it takes to get there over time.
It seems like our priority ought to be trying to achieve what you're talking about post haste.
Yes.
Let's go.
That's the plan. That's what we're working on. We're waiting for that 70% plan from ACOM, and that's the reason we're talking about having this meeting.
But keep in mind, this is a two-pronged approach. So there's no guarantees this receiving water study is going to give us relief. So while we have a 2018 deadline, the contaminant levels are going to drop from what we have interim limits currently. So that's part of the time-pressing issue is while we may be okay now and only have occasional violations, that's because they've given us interim limits that are not going to be extended
What I'd
forever.
like to know is where are we at on the plan to go back to regional water and present to them an alternative so that they can present it to their board to come back and say, we're going to give you levels similar to your interim permit now as your final permit, because that's what we talked about up there and that's what they were in agreement with.
Right. But I was under the understanding they would prefer to see a receiving study, and that's what we're trying to accomplish first before we go to them.
Okay, so we need to prioritize all of that because I think that's our viable plan forward. And don't get me wrong, Bill, I think wetlands are a great thing when they're appropriate. I think that, A, we're too far down the road to go back and start a plan because they wouldn't buy it, and they ultimately are the ones that are going to tell us what we can do, and I know they eventually will find us. And B, there's a lot of rainfall issues up here, and wetlands rely on a fairly consistent feed, and I'm not convinced that we could guarantee that up here with the heavy rainfalls and then no rainfall.
Well, what you're treating with the wetlands is what comes out of the ponds. Okay, so your source of water is the ponds, overflow or whatever, into the wetlands. Now, the wetlands can be designed up to, I did some work on it all on myself, and it needs to be looked at by a professional engineer. But at any rate, the largest thing I came up with to hold the water you're talking about, the capacity, is 10 acres. We own that land. We have trees on that land that I've talked to a Cal Fire forester, and he's told me they're all mature, mostly ponderosas. So it can be logged without deterrent. The soil is quite deep. It's surprisingly how deep. It's on the soil maps, it's 6 feet deep. So, and you can cut into the sides on a contour, because wetlands don't have to be a rectangle, and have it out, and you can have it drop from one wetland to another. And what it amounted to when I did this study, in the low times of the year when we put out very little water, nothing would probably leave the wetlands. In the high time of the year when you have a lot of water, that would be in the fall, before the rains came, or as the rains came. And then the water treatment plant will drop its volume. So you have a period in there where maybe you need a tank with this, with a high volume of water. I don't know. But the wetlands should control and take care of it. And the iron in the soil would work to take the aluminum out, which when I first started this, the engineering firm says, well, can you find information on aluminum? I don't know how you take it out. Well, I found data out of Canada, out of the southern states, and now another study saying that they can.
But the aluminum is going to, you're saying the aluminum is going to react with the iron.
No, it doesn't react. The best where is he? Lauren, tell me what happens if you put an iron base or with aluminum in building a trailer.
Everybody knows if you put the two together, it just goes to powder and it's gone. It just literally goes away.
You get galvanic corrosion, but you still have the element aluminum, and it's going to be either in the water or the soil or somewhere.
Yeah, it will be.
Yes.
But that's the point. We can't contaminate the soil with aluminum any more than we can the water. So by saying we took it out of the water and we put the water back in the Galia, then we get fined for polluting the soil with high levels of aluminum. And then when we get high rain periods and we flush that back into the water, we're right back to where we began.
This is why I say you have to run soil samples. It turns out the one test I got run was a small 100, 200 foot out of one of the overflow out of one of the ponds. And I got okay to pull a sample at the bottom of this little wetland, or you could call it a riparian area that exists for overflow. And what had happened when we took the sample down at the bottom, there was no chlorine byproduct.
Okay. I can understand that.
All right. Then the aluminum increased. The reason it increased is the soil has got a lot of aluminum in it. And so and it's water soluble. So you have to have, like what goes in the wetlands, you have to have things in the wetlands that slows the water flow down. You have to have plants, wildlife, insects, soil activated things, and they're the things that take and put that aluminum in a position not to leach out.
But the problem is, that you're not gonna run a citric acid extraction test on the soil there. It's gonna leach if you get enough rainfall through there. And unless bugs eat it and turn into butterflies and fly away with the aluminum in their bellies, the aluminum is still there, and we're still gonna be on the hook. And ultimately, we're gonna get fined for polluting the soil.
No, because these people have run long-term trials and they didn't. Okay?
Well, but I hear it staying, and I mean, you know, under the right circumstances with the right things that we're trying to remove, wetlands might be a good solution, but it's kind of like when the guys try and sell me water magnets to take calcium, iron, and magnesium out of the water. Chemically, I say, how can you do that? What is it stuck to the magnet in the pipe, and is it going to build up, or no, it's just modified so it can't do anything wrong? Well, state and federal government doesn't care what you modify it to. If you put aluminum in the soil in excess of what they allow you, they're going to fine you.
Okay.
If you put it in the water, same thing.
There's been no test around the ponds about how much accumulated aluminum there is there.
It'll be a calculation, Bill. Whatever we put in the water and whatever doesn't come out of the water is now in the soil. It's a simple calculation.
There's been no calculation either.
Right, but I mean, if we did do that calculation, we'd find out it's not a solution.
No, the ponds aren't a solution because they do not have enough surface area. They're small. It's only a small surface area. You do not have it all with high content iron soils there. It goes into volcanic soils on the bottom, and it comes up in some of the sides, and then it disappears. The first pond has volcanic rock around it. You go down to the next pond. Now, I know all this because I've walked it, looked at it, and taken samples of soil. You go to the next pond, and it's on deep soil, and it's completely different. There isn't a volcanic thing in the bottom of it. It's all soil. It has lots of shrubbery growing around it, and so forth. Now, out of both of these ponds, there's two drains, and where they draw the sample in the ponds, and it took a while to do this, I finally asked some people at the plant, and I said, where do you pull your sample? Because I was told you couldn't move the sample area you pulled the sample from. And it's the drain pipe out of the top. When the ponds pick up and the water drains into the pipe, right there is where they get the water sample to run through the lab. And I asked the people, can we move that point? And the answer I got was yes, if you can explain why you want to move it and everything. So you could move the point to the end of the wetlands, and you could pull your sample there before it goes into the Magalia Reservoir to see if you qualify for the thing.
I understand that. You're leaving behind the aluminum. Obviously, it's settling out into the wetland.
It's much more complex than that.
Well, right. No, but what we're saying on the ponds is we want it to settle out.
Right.
The aluminum will settle out. That sludge will be eventually excavated out of there and hauled off and disposed of. But the water that comes out of there that's clean enough to go back to the headwater, we want that aluminum to be in it.
Well, there's no problem with that because you can divert it back that way.
Exactly.
Before it goes into the wetlands.
But we're not going to be, the wetlands is going to be nothing more than our big ponds, because ultimately we're going to have to dredge your wetland to get that aluminum out of that soil and haul it
That's why
off.
you make several, and Mark's agreeing with you, and part of the program is you go in and burn it, and you clean it up, and you start all over again.
Well, yeah, it can become a problem to dispose of that material.
Yeah, it's just like we have to haul the soil out of the existing ponds all the way to the county dump, and have a special permit to do that.
That's right.
Yeah, I understand those problems are there, and we're already dealing with them.
Okay.
But the interesting thing, last I'll say about this, because we got to go home sometime tonight, is that the reason these wetlands have been used, Arcadia is the closest one, it's a sewage plant wetlands. They were faced with a plant like what we're talking about, the 15, 20 million plus plant in that bay, and they couldn't figure out how to pay for it. And so they came up with a wetland solution. This was in 1990, and the thing was promoted by two professors at Humboldt State that were out of the biology department. The plant is still working. But that's it.
We need to go a different direction.
Yeah, Lauren, what, please be brief. I about shot the whole agenda tonight.
Thank you. I just made a few notes here that just saved myself from my eyeballs popping out. First thing to remember, Cliff, is where's the aluminum now? It's been dumping into Old Magalia Reservoir forever, and nobody seems to be complaining about that. That's the first thing. Then second thing is this business plan that the financial officer was talking about. He says he doesn't know what the return would be in order to gauge whether it's a profitable thing or not. I say to him the example of, you could say that going to Chico at 55 miles an hour you wouldn't get a ticket, and that would be a good plan. And I would say to you, I could go 65 to Chico and I might not get a ticket, so you can't estimate that in like that. The other thing that I have on here is thank you, Bill, for arguing against a $15 million plant. I truly believe there's something else besides that. But there's two other things to think about. I was listening to this board tonight over this subject here, and I was reminded of what I saw on TV all week. What did I see on TV all week? I saw President Trump was having trouble with leaking secrets and stuff, and it was causing him some trouble. Now, why was that? Because he kept the Obama folks over, some of them over, and they still believe the other side works. And I was looking at this and I was thinking, George still is absolutely convinced that we need a $16 million plan. And we've got a new board here. And I'm thinking, maybe we need to get somebody who wants to work on doing something besides a $16 million plant, folks. That's what I'm thinking. So that thing brought a lot to it. And the other thing is, while I'm on that subject, those four members over there are about $500,000 a year in members over there. And I personally don't like the way they look at each other and smile, because I think they all just work for George anyway, and I don't think the board's getting their money's worth out of it, and maybe you ought to consider about rotating a few people out and get a few people in that don't owe their allegiance to the general manager, and they owe their allegiance to the board and the citizens of Paradise. Thank you.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
So my background is in finance. A return on investment, you take your investment divided by your investment minus your revenue. So you have a sunk cost here. There is no ROI. This is the cost of compliance, just like any other business has to pay to become in compliance. And unfortunately, there will never be an ROI on any of the solutions that we choose. And I do believe you have a valid point. We have a brand new board here that probably needs to discuss this, what options are out there that are feasible, and really consider the unintended consequences. I'm a sustainability professional. I'm a huge proponent of wetlands. But in this particular instance with the hillside, we're going to look at erosion, accumulation, hazardous waste material, purchasing trucks, truck traffic, all the way down to the landfill. We have road damage. We have a single-lane skyway now. We're all going to hate that. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to drive behind the PID trucks. And I don't want our PID to buy semi-trucks, because the cost of compliance on semi-diesels is really out of control right now as well. That'll cost you about $220,000 per truck. Then I'm thinking about mudslides, worker accidents, as that hill needs to be scooped out and refilled and scooped out and refilled. And so just think long term about the wetlands, because it's on a hillside. And I'm telling you, my friends at Beck, if you try to cut down one tree, they will be strapping themselves to it. And so I could see it now. They did it in Oroville with PG&E. I'm not part of Beck, but I'm telling you what they will do, and that will be a public relations nightmare for our little town.
Thank you.
30 seconds. The agenda item is, do you want to schedule a meeting to hear a report on $1 million report? Yes or no?
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I won't. I've already told you my opinion, Bill.
I'm sort of roaming right now. My eyes are turning yellow. So let's please make or maybe we've already made a motion on this Georgia special meeting. Let's get the business done, and then we'll take a break.
Okay.
If not, I'll make a motion that we approve the special meeting for the directors and the manager to consider settling a special board of directors meeting to present an update on the proposed processed water recycle project.
Date and time?
Date and time.
Date and time.
About
March 1st.
Wednesday, March 1st?
Yeah.
How about 6 o'clock? Is that okay?
3/1, and I don't have my phone with me.
Wednesday?
That's going to be next.
2 weeks from now.
That's 2 weeks. Okay, next week is going to kill me. All right, 2 weeks from now I can handle it. 3/1 at what time again?
6, okay?
6 p.m.
Would that
Okay.
include the B reservoir, looking at that, like Dan had?
If you choose.
If it's short, you might as well consolidate. Yeah.
So, to process water recycled project at the time of 3/1 at 6 p.m.
We have a second.
There you go.
Second.
Vote, please. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. 10-minute break.
With him first.
Let's come back to order, please, people.
Okay.
I told myself I'd never run a meeting this late, but there's just too many things on the agenda. It's been talked about before to have, at one time we did that. We had meetings every 2 weeks with the board, and we didn't have an inch-thick agenda. So, at any rate, what I'm going to skip around now, simply to get this thing done, and right now we're going to go to PID Policy and Procedures Manual, Ad hoc Meeting Procedures, Review Committee Proposal. Consider approval to adopt revisions on Chapter 2, Directors and Officers, Chapter 4, Meetings as proposed or as amended. Action may be taken. George was at the meeting. He gave us his input, and we went through, and George has a copy in there. The only change that I know of is the part about, it's on the back of our agenda, so it'll make it easy for me to find it, is that in addition to what is marked there, this thing on agenda item procedures information for the public would be stricken, the whole page.
Stricken.
Which one is that?
It's called Agenda Item Procedures Information for the Public.
What page is that on, Bill?
I've got it, it's in your agenda, or it should be.
Well, it was in the packet, right?
Yeah, it's in
Did
the
you get to
packet.
that?
That would be added to what's listed. It is also in the report.
98, got it.
I'd like a motion on the report and a second, that it be approved, and then we'll debate it as soon as we get the motion on the floor, so we can move quickly.
So moved. Oops.
Before I.
Oh, okay, sure,
say
go for it,
something?
go for it.
In going over this item by item, there's over 20 changes in here to discuss. I'm wondering, could we table this till the next meeting, just in the interest of time?
Want to make a motion to that effect, and then we'll act upon it.
Okay, well, I make that motion that we move this item to the next meeting, put it on the
Okay,
agenda.
second?
I'll second that.
Okay, now I'll point out what the problem, there's basic things in here that change the way we do business considerably. It'll make the board meetings more efficient. We will get rid of a lot of things that are in here that need to be gone. And at any rate, I don't think that any of them are major to be concerned about, but if you have any concerns, but to me, we can do it. We want to move on after this at our next meeting to number 12 in here, procurement policies. And so if I can convince you that you won't do any harm to the district by approving this, that Dan and myself went over it, and George had his chance to give input to it. So Dan?
I don't know how many questions they've got. You know, we discussed it, and we like what we suggested, but I have no idea. You guys have a problem with any of the changes? Yeah, you got.
I think there's going to be some
I'd
questions.
be going over item by item.
Okay, did anybody else want to talk to the motion?
If I may add something, I had a couple concerns. We don't need to go through it now, and I don't think they're critical, but maybe if this were to go back to committee, we could raise those, talk through them. I don't think they're fatal, but maybe it's just some wordsmithing issues.
Okay.
Just a suggestion.
Who's in favor of tabling? Please say yes.
Yes.
Aye. Yes.
So that there's a majority of 3 to 2. Or 3, I don't know. Okay, we'll move on to the next thing on the agenda. As soon as I find my agenda. Okay. I would like to table the water agencies and the Butte local agency formation commission to the next meeting.
I'll second that.
Yes, and?
On the
Is that time sensitive?
Yeah, the LAFCO, we have to nominate someone before our next regular meeting, by the March 10th. Our next regular meeting is on the 15th, so unless you want to add it to this.
We're having a special meeting on March 1st.
Add it to that one?
Yeah, we can add that
Okay.
to the agenda of the special meeting.
Okay,
We'll cover it then.
okay.
So which one is both?
Both.
Tabling both, and then they're putting the LAFCO on the special
Both
meeting.
E and F.
Is there any further discussion about that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay, next thing on here. So, the different committee reports, it looks like almost all of them have been covered, except for the Paradise Lake Recreation Committee, the changes in the rules on it that is in the packet. I'd like a motion to approve them. I went through the committee. Greg, Passanini, and George all had input into it. There was very little problems with it. It's more of a housekeeping thing, changing things up to date and so forth. It didn't change the rates charged.
Yeah.
Yeah, we already approved it.
It's been approved in the
Yeah, the consent
Well, that's a
calendar.
consent agenda.
Yeah, we
Okay,
did.
so that's done.
That's correct.
I'm sorry, I'm not functioning as well as I should be. Water Conservation meeting, we canceled it. Because
Reschedule it for the 23rd.
Schedules, yeah, for the 25th. Ad hoc meeting procedures review, you just put that off. Prioritizing community concerns, we've already done that, did away with the committee. Let's see, what do we got left here?
North State Economic Forecast Conference Report.
It was an interesting, I'll be brief, 17th annual. I've gone to probably 5 or 6 in a row now, or 7, I don't know. This one was different in some ways. I was there by myself. In the past, I've always been with somebody else. And they did publish an economic scorecard for Northern California and other places. It might be interesting to look at it. It shows that we're not doing that well as Northern California economically. That actually, for the most part, things have decreased in economic performance. And I know from working in agriculture, it's decreased considerably there. Incomes are way down. So that was part of it. It had several speakers. For the most part, they were good, and some were entertaining. Yes.
Can I borrow that and bring it back to you?
Sure.
I mean, the whole packet.
Oh, the whole packet? Oh,
Absolutely.
okay.
I want to share it with my wife.
Some of it I've disposed of tonight, but you could.
That's
let's
okay.
see. Okay, wait a minute. I'll give you the rest of it. I just want to make sure there's nothing here that I want to have.
Nothing. No pictures.
No pictures. I could tell you a story, but I'm not going to do it. This thing's gone on. I did have an interesting visit with a engineer with Holdridge and Cool. They're the firm that did our study on the Magalia Reservoir years ago, looking for a fault line that could be seen on maps. They dug 2 different pits. What he told me is that they could not find the fault line. They found the Tuscan layer of lava, but they could not find any soil that they could date the Tuscan thing. So they don't know how long it's there. And I said, well, what do you do? And he said, well, if we want to continue the study to find the fault, it costs $250,000 plus. And I said, well, why so expensive? He said, we go down all the way down wherever the fault mark is and see if we can find it. So he doesn't know exactly how much it would cost in the report back. And I said, well, what happens if we want to build a dam there? Now, what are you going to cost for that? And he says, yeah, Mark, I had the same feeling. But he said $50,000. And I said, really? And he says, all we have to do is study the footprint of the dam to see what we can find there geologically. And he said, that should be easy enough to do and give you an answer whether you can build a dam or not. So I thought that was very interesting, and it was an interesting talk. But they do things like geotechnical engineering, environmental consulting, construction quality assurance, solid waste engineering, geology, and hydrology.
Okay. Thank you.
And so I thought it was a very good meeting. I also talked to a member, Paul Dawson, and oh, come on. Oh, help me out, Dustin.
Gene Massa?
Yeah, Gene Massa. I knew Gene's father for years ago, and he was one of my customers. He's since passed away. I hadn't seen Gene for about 15 years. He runs the Biggs West Gridley Water District. And he told me some things that he absolutely insists on in running the district as a business. He puts everything out to 3 bids, no exceptions, and doesn't feel like there should be. You should use the exceptions that's available to you in the bylaws or Brown Act. He says you should always have 3 bids, and that comes back to the $1,200,000 that I thought we should have had 3 bids on. And he went on for other business practices that he's put into his district. His district is doing fine financially. The reserves are up. He replaced the district manager that he escorted to district attorney, because she had committed fraud, and it had been found out. And at that time, he was corneristic at audits, and this caught up to the lady, and off she went. I don't know what she was fined or jailed or what. At any rate, so he's familiar with those kind of attorneys and services. He's given me the names of people in Chico that we can talk to for that kind of an attorney that, as far as he knows, they're still doing. He used to work with him before he became the manager. He's still a practicing attorney a little bit. He had some good remarks about Dustin. I don't know how he did that. And so, at any rate, that would pretty much cover everything from the. Turned out to be a very productive day for me.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay. George, do you want to report any more tonight? Because you do have things on your list there.
I have my regular report. I'll answer any questions in the interest of time, or you can call me anytime and ask me those questions.
Okay. Let's see, staff and building. We need to do this conference with labor negotiators. Now, my understanding, we're going to pick representation to the union, and I don't know why we can't do that in open session.
I need guidance from the board on how they want to proceed with negotiations, and also they have the opportunity to provide us with any opening issues that they would, or labor concerns they want dealt with during negotiations.
So that component there should be done in closed session. I think what you said is perfectly fine to be discussed in open session. That is, who do you want to be your representative?
Yes, that's the one thing I'd like to vote on. I'd like the Finance Committee to work on the union negotiations when they start. Usually it's anywhere from 4 to 6 meetings. And rather than hiring Dustin's firm to do it, which is the gal that's come from it, has done an excellent job, but I think this board could do a good job. The reason I put you guys on the Finance Committee to begin with, you've met payrolls, you've hired and fired people, you have experience with the insurance and all the other things that have come up in the negotiations. And I think you could probably do a job with maybe some insights that our attorney doesn't particularly have. So that was my suggestion.
Did we move past the...
Yeah, the general manager's report.
We're going to come back to that.
Yeah, we're going to come back to it. I'm trying to get this thing cleaned up. I'm not
Okay.
Better
being
clarify.
If you want to table things again, Ann, I have no problem.
Negotiating
Yeah.
committee, just to be clear.
I'm just trying to get this meeting for not here till 11 o'clock.
Mr. President, if I may add something, if I heard you correctly, you suggested appointing the Finance Committee as your negotiating team.
Right.
What I would suggest is you create an ad hoc negotiating committee. You could populate it with the same folks if you want. But the reason it's an ad hoc committee as opposed to a standing committee is because you don't want the public being involved in your negotiations.
Okay.
This is a private matter.
Now,
Certainly the...
Form an ad hoc committee for negotiations with the union consisting of Dan Wetland and
Cliff
Cliff.
Jacobson.
And which one of you want to be chairman?
He does.
He does?
Well, thank
Cliff is the chairman. And I don't even have to ask a vote on it. That's one of the few powers that the president has. Thank you very much.
Quicker than you.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Are you guys willing to take this on? This is what...
I'm willing to, unless you're dying anxious to.
It is very time consuming.
Yeah,
Correct.
And it's generally during business hours
I-
because
If you want to take over on that, Mark, I have no problem with you working with
I'm
Dan.
not volunteering. I'm just, I'm just asking that,
Yeah, do
you
you
know.
want to lose the expertise of counsel? That's what they do for a living, is
That's
negotiate
what I'm-
contracts?
We're not going away. This will be a recurring item of discussion at each board meeting. Presumably, I'll be here, or Emily will be here. So,
Okay, so I thought I heard from him that there was no lawyer involved.
Yeah, can I just give you a little history? So we've done it multiple ways. We've done it the ad hoc committee way. We've done it with a single board member before. One of the things that comes up, just to be blunt, when two committee members are in the room negotiating, then the union knows that if they can convince those two, they only need one more to sell their story. Just be aware of that. Secondly, it's very personal to these people. This is their livelihood, so it gets very contentious directly between employees and you folks, so you got to be prepared for that. Why we moved to having Emily, who's negotiated many, many agreements with teachers associations as well as the last couple of ours, is it separates the personalities of the board from the employees. That's why it was done that way in the past. Did you get a...
I agree with George, because the personality on the board was Ken Hunt, and the employees don't trust Mr. Hunt and didn't like his performance, and they specifically petitioned, at least through me, I don't know who else, that we do not have Mr. Hunt anymore. So the easiest thing to do was to hire the attorneys, and they did good work. But I think she had 4 or 5 meetings, and it was over with.
I don't know. We can, if
Yeah.
that's
In other words,
important, we can find out.
It's up to you how you handle it, but it shouldn't be 6, 7, 8 meetings. The union will probably come in with what their offer is. I've been on the committee, was removed from the committee, and they're rather specific. They know what their goals are, and we settled last time for raises were pegged to
COLAs.
Social Security. And I would suggest, that's to me is what they should be done again. But that was a rather simple thing when we went to that. That's why we didn't have a lot of meetings. And it got done because the climate at that time was, there was no raises. In fact, people were getting cuts.
Couple questions. When would the first meeting be approximately?
Whenever you guys want to have.
And how frequently are they going to be?
Whatever you want to do.
Generally, we work the meetings with the IBW representation and their team. And so we try to push for an initial meeting within, we've already worked with them, probably would be early March, I'm guessing. And then we try to do it every couple weeks after that.
Work hours, though, right?
And it's always during work hours.
And how long do the meetings generally last?
2 to 4 hours, sometimes 6.
I'm going to be hard pressed to make that, honestly.
Well, to tell you the honest thing about it, the short time I was on the committee, they didn't last like that. And you can, just like I've been doing in these meetings, you can control the agenda. You can have the meeting and then just say, okay, and if it gets too bad, you just say, okay, we'll see you. You go back and talk to the people that you're representing and come back to us.
All right.
And so you can control it, you can limit time, but you have to be disciplined to do that. So you can't just get caught up in arguments and stuff.
I'll do it on one condition.
What's that?
I'm the chair of the finance and he's vice chair. We'll reverse the role on this one.
You're going to give
Well,
me back, huh?
Great.
Agreed?
Agreed? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Ad hoc committee is formed,
Good.
and away we go. Okay, we should be to where Cliff is actually going to take over the conduct of this part of the board meeting tonight. And it's all yours, Cliff.
So,
Ann's going to assist him.
on the,
We're general manager's report
on the
now?
general manager report, George, and I know we discussed a little bit of this earlier, and in my mind, there are some issues with the portion relating to not only the treatment plant chemicals, but some of the taste and odor report as well. And I know we discussed it, and I guess I have a problem with some of the calculations that were laid out, and I know we talked about it, and I feel that there needs to be some clarification, because I know there's a real reluctance of the people at the water treatment plant to make changes, and again, we did discuss that. Going forward, I can almost guarantee you that with the current board that we have and the knowledge that we have on this board, there are going to be challenges to that on going out to bid on chemicals to run the water treatment plant and doing due process on jar testing, and it's not going to go away. And again, I understand the reluctance of the plant operators. They're proud of what they're doing. They don't want anything to rock the boat for them. And I've read Jim's report, and that he's kind of, it kind of looks to me like he's very reluctant to look at things that our policy and procedures manual says we should be doing. And so what I want to do is, and I know you're going to get involved in that, but as a director, I'm asking you to, look at that and see what you can do to prepare them and give them the confidence that maybe they need. And I think maybe if you talk to Ann about her experience in water treatment plants, and Mark in the wastewater, and how they go out for competitive bids and how they make the suppliers do performance tests and prove that their products work.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, you may.
How about creating an ad hoc committee, since we never had specialists on the board that could speak a treatment plant person's language. So
Well, you did. I was there. You just didn't believe me. I was just... Now there's three
I'm going
of us.
going back a year. So if you had an ad hoc committee that could just work with me to meet with the treatment plant staff, have a discussion about how we operate, what we're doing, suggestions of their experiences in their other places, so that when it comes back to the board, it's a better discussion.
I agree with that, and being so Bill gave me the opportunity to run this portion of it, I'm going to elect 2 individuals, and I'll tell you why. Because even though I would like to be a part of that, My forte for 40 years has been selling chemicals for food sanitation, commercial water treatment for boilers, cooling towers, a little bit of potable water, and I understand it, and I've got full libraries on it, so I'm not naive in that area. But I'm going to look at these two individuals because we've got two people here who have done for probably the same period of time what I've done, only they've done it in the arena we're talking about. So I can't think of two individuals that would be better suited to head up that ad hoc committee than Ann Rice and Mark Sulik. So I'm going to nominate the two of you for that board, and I don't care which one of you wants to be the lead on it, but I'm sure you'll work it out between the two of you, and I would challenge you to challenge George to give them the confidence to know that we can steer them in the right direction and save the district money and possibly even improve the turbidity issues, the chlorination issues,
TNO issues.
all of those issues, taste and odor, everything, and not only reduce the cost, but possibly even the amount and the array of chemicals that we're using. So.
Yay. I now appoint an ad hoc committee. What's the title of the committee?
Title of the committee is Water Treatment Plant
Operations Review.
Operational Review.
Okay.
What's the acronym for that?
WTP. Off review.
Let me finish, guys, and then Ann and Mark, and we'll make Ann the chairman, because she's only had one other committee that she's chair of. And so you guys got it. Thank you very much for volunteering.
Okay. I was supposed to say that.
Well, say it.
Thank you very much for volunteering.
Quite welcome.
Yes.
Go ahead with your report now.
And so I had some comments too on the report.
Go right ahead.
On the TNO portion that Jim did, I have several questions, but I'm going to speak to him privately. I'm sure he'll be able to answer. And then I too agree with Cliff that we need to go out for bid, and by continuing using the same chemicals year over year, we aren't availing ourselves of best available technology, of new coagulants and such that come out. And even if we may not save any money, we may get something just the same price, but it may work better, and so improve water quality. So that's what I had to say about that. Let's see. Then I think you included the on this is iPad page 127, the proposed emergency rulemaking for water conservation. And if you could just, without having to read all this and I did actually read that big thing.
The big version?
Yes, all the way through. And tell me the gist, is Governor Brown just taking us to the 20%, or did he actually invoke the 55-gallon per person per day, or what?
This is separate. Okay. So this was an extension of the emergency rules relative to conservation. So they're kind of taking a two-pronged approach. The other was long-term solutions or long-term directives. So this one is short-term. It's not difficult for us to comply. It's just more monthly reporting and updating our stress test. Philosophically, it's a little difficult when you've got full reservoirs across the state and 90+% of the districts have adequate water, that they're going to unanimously continue a drought emergency. It's very frustrating, but that's the gist. It's not a big hit for us. It'll just make us jump through some hoops.
So what is there a percent conservation component in there that you have to adhere to, or it's just a stress test reporting?
If we do the stress test, then we get out of the percent reduction.
Oh, okay.
Because we prove we have enough water, and we can do that easily.
Easily, okay. And then I also noticed on page 133 that they estimated that, of course, all the districts that are going to conserve are going to lose revenue, but they weren't interested in paying us at all for any of that, saying that
of course,
through agency rates, that all this was recoverable, all our loss, which means we would have to raise rates.
Yep.
So, yeah.
It's part of the
Just
reason we
want
did
that out
last
there
time.
in the public.
So it's the state forcing
Yeah, us to
water
conserve,
districts
so we'll make
to
less.
conserve and
So
then
we would have to restructure our rates to recoup our loss. Okay,
Is that all you had in, or?
let's see.
I wanted to comment on the thing you just went through.
No, wait a minute,
Oh, I know
she's
you
not
are.
done yet.
Call on me.
Okay, and the last thing on George's report, I think, was, it was just a small thing on page 157. When Jim gives us all these monthly production figures, I'd like him to include a max and min daily for the month. What was his maximum production, MGD?
Okay.
And what was his minimum?
That shouldn't be a problem.
And
That's
that's all.
daily max min, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rick Kellogg, I turn the podium back over to you there, buddy.
Oh, you're through with the.
Well, unless you want me to ask for the legal,
Yeah, next is legal.
Legal, yeah.
You want to say something?
No, I wanted to comment on the laws that they put on there and tell you a little story. When we went through the drought and we conformed with all the rules, sent in all the reports, South Feather, who had plenty of water and so forth, I called them up and I said, what are you doing for drought rules? And the guy started laughing. And I said, what are you laughing? He says, we're not going to put any drought rules in. We've got plenty. So, Dustin, did they get fined over that?
No. I wrote a very strongly worded letter that actually made it into the Chico ER.
So there's another track on this. In other words, you can take their example and have Dustin help you and not have to worry about something that's badly written and they're going to have to eat it because even the Stanislaus River down in, is out of its banks. And the same problem. Of course, Sacramento is out of its banks. Everything's out of their banks, it seems like.
San
So
Luis
I don't
Reservoir's
think
full
they're-
now.
You know, I think we can ignore it and keep going and not have to worry.
The real quick, the district did send a letter on this. You've seen it?
Yes.
Okay, good. I just wasn't sure you had. Good.
Okay, any more, Cliff, on your program?
I have a question for you, Dustin. Has this issue with Oroville Dam put the twin tunnels on the back burner at all?
No.
No?
Takes a lot more than that to get Jerry Brown off Center Road.
Well, his dad built the dam, so, all right.
I guess we're ready for legal report, right?
Yeah, the legal report's next.
Okay, President Kellogg made a request that I walk through the general manager and chief financial officer's contracts. I have copies here of both. I have enough for the board. I may have a couple other for the public. I'll try to be quick given the late hour. Well, let me wait until you guys have a copy in front of you. The two agreements are very similar. There are some differences, which we can talk about, but kind of high level, I'll just walk through it. On page 1, I'm at George's contract with the district. Section 1 sets forth his duties. So sub A, he's got a job description set forth in Exhibit A, and that's the essential functions of his position essentially set forth in that exhibit. Section B says that the general manager is obligated to perform his duties to the best of his ability in accordance with the highest professional and ethical standards of the profession. So that's kind of the performance standard that we're demanding out of George. And then there's some, I'm moving now to page 2. The term of the agreement is, it does not have a fixed term. In other words, it extends until the parties decide it's no longer working, and that could be exercised by either side, either by the manager or the district. And that's a nice segue into Section 3, which is the resignation and termination provision. So subdivision A, and up until this point, the two contracts between your two officers are essentially the same. The job duties are obviously different, but the structure that we've gone through is exactly the same. George can resign at any time with or without cause. and he's agreed to give 45 days advance notice to the district of that. The district may at any time terminate George upon 30 days advance written notice, but there's some conditions that come along with that we'll discuss in upcoming provisions. Subdivision C is that the district may terminate the general manager without cause. What that means is, going back to Exhibit A and then his duties set forth in Section 1, that he could be performing those perfect, yet the district still has the right to say, we want to go in another direction. And again, this is the same, very similar clause for Kevin as well. I'm now at 3D. If you decide to terminate, and I think this is important, given our special meeting coming up next, that a decision to terminate shall be made in accordance with the laws, including the Brown Act provisions regarding personnel actions. What that's referring to, and I can speak to this later, but we owe notice to not just George, but any employee. If there's a complaint involving some potential discipline or dismissal, there's a notice process. Public agency employees, I don't know if you board members are aware of this, but you have what essentially is a constitutional right. It's a property right in a position. And it's called a Skelly hearing. So if you're going to be subject to dismissal, you have kind of a due process right to receive the evidence that the employee has allegedly done wrong, have a hearing on that, and then a decision that ultimately the board would engage in. So returning to the agreement, 3E is, let's say that there is cause. So we've talked about termination without cause. There's also termination for cause. Sub E is addressing that situation, and the district has contracted that basically if there's cause, the manager agrees, or Kevin for that matter, that you will give the employee the option of resigning rather than having that mark on his record, so to speak. Section 4 is the severance pay. This is part of the strings that go along with exercising a without cause termination. And the district has agreed to a cash payment equal to 12 months base salary. And that, too, is also in Kevin's agreement. Now, further on, I'm now at the top of page 3. This was language that was actually added maybe 2012, thereabouts, to address the City of Bell situation. You may recall there was actually some crimes by the employees, yet the contract spelled out that they were required, the district, or the city in that case, was required to pay a severance. So these folks were not doing their job, actually committing crimes, yet they received a severance package. So there was legislation passed that said, we don't care what your contract says, it's against public policy to pay an employee a severance that has done something criminal. So that entire paragraph beginning on page 2, carrying over to page 3, is to address the new requirements of the City of Bell legislation. Section 5 is the salary, and this is not accurate. We have a salary schedule somewhere, but that was the salary as of the date this agreement was amended.
There's amendments, addendums to
right. It may be in here. It is. There's a compensation summary in the back.
They're on the back. Yeah.
Automobile, mobile phone, section 6. George and Kevin, is this in yours too? Automobile, just a phone? Yeah. Okay. And so the phone allowance is still in existence, isn't that right, George? Yes. $80 a month. The district vehicle, there's actually a resolution that was given back by George to as a cost-saving measure. So that actually part of the agreement has been modified. Supplemental benefits, I think the remaining of these terms, fairly straightforward. Again, very similar to what Kevin has. Both of the agreements in that Section 13 contain an arbitration clause. So I will stop there. I'll tell you, I've seen a lot of these. There's some minor differences, but it's a fairly customary agreement. There's nothing in here that's significantly different than what other managers of similar public agencies have.
I have a
Yes.
question. Wasn't one of the differences between, maybe Kevin does have the same thing, is there's an extra 3% in retirement?
I don't get that.
Right. That's one of the other differences. Could you address that one?
There is I think this is because of me. You can blame me, Kevin. In Section 3, so I'm at Kevin's agreement, Section 3, page 2, he has a different subdivision D.
Section 3.
What I did, this is not as explicit in George's agreement, but in Kevin's agreement, and again, I think this is just because it probably came to me. I wanted a more explicit termination for cause provision, and that's in part because of the City of Bell situation, if memory serves me correctly. So, I mean, we could read that. As I said, it's not explicit in George's contract. It's implied. And I think the procedure would be the same if, in fact, there was cause. But, so I'll just read it. Termination for cause. Employment status of all of employees' rights under this agreement may be terminated by the board upon written notice for breach of contract or failure to perform responsibilities as set forth in this agreement. So what that is a failure to follow the duties set forth in Exhibit A, the job description, or some of the duties set forth in Section 1. The board shall not terminate this agreement pursuant to this paragraph until a written statement of the grounds for termination has first been served upon employee. Employee shall then be entitled to 10 working days to respond in writing. The decision of the board shall be final. If the decision to terminate is made for cause, employees shall not be entitled to severance pay as set forth in this Section 4 below. So this is really just a slightly lengthier period of notice and then opportunity for employee response than what the Brown Act requires. The Brown Act has a separate standalone provision that says if we want to discipline or dismiss an employee, this goes for George or any other district employee, that we're required to give 24 hours notice. The employee has the opportunity of conducting that discussion in closed session or open session. And if you don't comply with that procedure, your action, if you decided to go ahead and terminate or demote, for example, your action is void. So, does that answer your question?
My question was just on the difference of the retirement between the two.
I think is it 2.5? Is it 3?
I'm sorry. Did I go above and beyond?
Yeah, he gets extra 3%. That's all I wanted to clarify.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's all clear now.
All right.
That's been in there since my first contract.
Thank you.
I have education requirements in mind too, that the district will continue to pay for education from continuing education.
I don't have any questions of Dustin. Do you have any questions? Board members? At this time? Okay. The last thing on the agenda is a closed session.
What about the staff?
If I may, well, are you on the special meeting agenda,
What about
Mr.
the
President?
staff?
Special meeting agenda, yeah.
Oh, that's right. There's separate.
Do we have to accept the staff and billing reports, or did we already do that?
Did you actually give your full legal report there,
Yeah.
Dustin?
This is it?
Yeah, that was what I was asked to do. In the interest of time, unless there's questions, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. If you want to go over the billing and booking report, we'll do that now.
We're just going to accept them, right? That's all. I didn't have any comments on that one.
Well,
Yeah,
we can
just
also
information
put it
only.
off to March 1st, table it, like we've done with some other things.
Yeah, I don't think we much have questions on that. We could just accept it. It's okay.
Well, make a motion, folks. Don't just
Okay,
want
let's see,
to me.
12, where are we?
I keep working on that.
I make a motion to accept the staff billing reports.
I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion about it? Does anybody have any questions about the staff billing report? That's
No.
part of the process here. You don't just close it out. You have to talk. If you don't talk, we don't go anywhere with it. So. The only thing I'll remark about is MPS permit for discharge to Magalia Reservoir, no violations.
What
Any
did you
other?
say?
No violations.
PDES, no violations.
PDES
Yeah.
permit.
Okay.
That's a good
That was
thing.
it?
Dan, do you have any comments?
I do not.
No? Ann?
No.
Mark?
No.
Cliff, you gotta have something to say.
I'm good.
You're good. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. So, what's the title of the closed session? I've even forgotten. Anyway, we're going to go in closed session about personnel matters.
Mr. President, we're kind of blending the two meetings here. So maybe if I may, are we adjourning the regular meeting and opening the special meeting? Okay. We do have an opportunity for public participation. I don't know if anyone's interested. And then we also have an opportunity for public comment on the closed session item
We have director's comments.
on our regular meeting
Yes.
agenda.
Okay.
So we're kind of blending the two. Unless, if it's okay, I'd like to maybe just briefly share with the board our discussion yesterday morning.
Wait, since I screwed up a little bit here, does anybody else from the public have any more things to say about anything we've talked about tonight? It's open-ended.
I'm actually not understanding the closed session. I just got really confused.
You what?
I just don't understand the closed session.
Well, Dustin's going to explain that in a minute. So what was the other thing I admitted? Director's comments?
Director's comments.
Okay, we'll do director's comments.
I'll start.
You'll start. Okay.
So tonight was a pretty full agenda. We talked about a lot of things. I'm very happy with the tenure and not the tenure, but the personalities of everybody here and how the meetings have been going lately and how actually people actually can disagree and be polite at the same time. Amazing. But I'm enjoying the heck out of that. And I think we got some things accomplished today, and I'm looking forward to being productive every time we meet. So that's it for me.
I'm going to be the last one, so we'll go back, Mark next, Ann, and then Dan.
I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight and really good comments, and we've been listening to you, so appreciate that very much. And thanks for letting me be here. Appreciate that.
And I echo both of those, what they said.
In light of the hour, me too.
Okay,
It's your turn.
I promise not to be long-winded. What you saw tonight and heard and saw was a very independent board. Everybody has a little bit of different opinions. They made motions and did things maybe differently than I'd like. But that's part of this. So we have an active, participating board. So if you want to talk to somebody, come and talk to them. You're not going to run into a group of 3 or 2 or 1. You're just going to run into each individual's personality and make whatever point you want with them, because it looks like their doors are wide open and willing to listen. And I am very happy to have such a board after all these years. And I got an excuse for being such an inept resident. It's been over 10 years since the last time I had this job, so I'm actually a rookie too.
You're doing well.
Pound that hammer, would you, so we can be done with this session?
Okay, and we're going into closed session, and now Dustin is going to say.
Okay, so we're adjourning the regular meeting, opening the special meeting. Okay. So to bring the other 4 board members up to speed, yesterday Director Kellogg requested amending the agenda for the regular meeting. Staff said we didn't think we could do that. I got involved, so I had a discussion with Director Kellogg, and because we had posted our agenda and we didn't have the time to amend it, we decided that we were more than 24 hours away from what we thought would be a 9 o'clock special meeting, so we agendized it as a special meeting, actually a separate item. What Director Kellogg requested was a closed session discussion about the management employees. And I said, well, I went into my lawyer mode. Tell me there's only limited circumstances under which you can discuss things in closed session. And when in doubt, you discuss it in open session, right? That's kind of the guiding principle here. So I don't think, forgive me, Director Kellogg, I don't know that you quite knew what exactly you wanted to discuss. You just wanted to discuss the performance of...
You changed the title, I'm aware of that, and so that's fine with me.
Right. So what we have before you is a closed session public employee evaluation for all district managers. I'm not quite sure what exactly you want to discuss, but my caution to you is, as we just read in the manager's contracts and as the other management employees have, they have some protections in the law that says if you want to take action to demote or discipline, and I don't know if that's what you want to do. I'm out on a limb here, but if that is something you're approaching, we have not properly agendized that. So we can't do that this meeting. If that's something you want to consider, we just need to agendize it the correct way, provide the correct notice, and give the employees their legal protections. So that's my introduction. You do not have to have us in the room. You can invite us in at separate times. You can have me in, not in, whatever you want to do.
I told Dustin at the beginning of the meeting tonight, after having talked to this fellow down in the valley, that he runs this water district, but he's also an attorney. He said, you have to have Dustin in there, you're going to break the law. So Dustin is coming into this closed session. I'm not particularly, unless you as a board want to change it, I'm not asking for any employees to come in. And under the circumstances, I don't know what we would tell them. So I'll be glad to explain to you what I'm after in a closed session. And we'll come out and I'll give a report. What happened, usually these reports don't reveal much of anything. It depends on what the board wants to do. We can hold votes and so forth, but there's no minutes kept at these meetings. We're also not supposed to talk to anybody about what went on in the meetings. It's supposed to stay confidential. So those are the ground rules. Dustin's coming with us. Let's have our closed meeting and we can talk.
Yeah, with my clarification, you may want to ask the public if they've got any comments. Or
okay, any
staff,
comments from anybody?
This is so non-transparent, I don't even know what to comment on. Right? So we're doing performance reviews of the management. I think that is very wise of a new board, particularly too. But what I do remember, the concessions that were just made over the rate hikes, they should have been done a long time ago, because we knew we couldn't afford and we didn't have any reserves, right? But the board at the time, we were going through a major recession, the lost decade, and I think it was very ethical a decision for you to put off that rate hike, and I understand why that was done, but it turned out to become an emergency, and then your management team took a 10% pay cut. George turned in his truck. I mean, I can attest to his character that he is a very good manager and engineer.
Trouble meeting payroll.
Yes, and it's been, we do need to make changes, and I do know that that's why you're all sitting here. And so to be able to make those operational changes, those are going to be smart decisions. But, one thing I'm very proud of, to live in Paradise is that you have a local person who grew up here, went to college, and chose to work here and to bring his talents to his own town to make a positive difference. And tell me how many professionals do that. They go to engineering school, then they go work in the Bay. They go work somewhere else where they're going to make way more money than George makes here in Paradise. So I know a lot of people are upset about their salaries and so on, but I'm telling you, coming from the private industry, his salary is not excessive. It may be excessive for what people make in Paradise, because the only people that could be functional or at the same level might be a doctor at Feather River. Maybe. Right? And so we're paying for his professional expertise. And I do believe that as you get to know George, you will know that he does have much to offer. His expertise is very valuable. And I'm proud of how we manage the water system here. Personally, I will let you know that my relationship with him, he serves on the board of an international nonprofit where I'm the executive director of the Sustainability Management Association. His respect is so renowned. You should be very proud that he is your general manager here in Paradise. And if he were to go seek for another job, he would be well sought after. And so I want to highly encourage you to really get to know him first before you are going to make any rash decisions as new board members of PID. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you, Board. I'd just like to say once again, you're going in to do the job for the public. I have all the faith in the world in you. Do what you know in your mind and your heart is right, and we'll all be happy. Thank you.
Oh, of course. More.
Just briefly, having been through some of these discussions before, the best, absolute best managed entity in the town of Paradise is Park and Recs. They make half as much money for that director.
Any other comments? Barry?
I think the lady referred to non-transparency, and I believe that's the case here. Looking over the amended rules, to the adjustments you want to make to the rules and procedures, to me is very non-transparent. I don't know what the problem is with the management. The money that George makes and the money that Kevin makes are very comparable salaries for this kind of work. I don't think anybody sitting behind that desk could do those jobs without at least a year's training. And it's just unconscionable to me what I see going on here. Thank you.
Any more comments by anybody? Last call. Okay, let's go into closed session. And thank you all for coming tonight. We probably won't be reporting much of anything. The board agreed to take no action at this time. That's it.
Pound that hammer and let's go home.
Oh, we need to pound. Here, you pound the damn hammer.
Stand adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go home.